Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With your 2025 WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. That's right, Getting Over is back once again with some performance-enhancing audio for your ear holes as we break down everything that happened in WWE over the last week. We are talking about that disaster of an episode of SmackDown from Friday night, a much better edition of Raw from Monday, and we will be previewing the entirety of WWE Elimination Chamber before this episode is out. It has been quite a whirlwind here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast of late. Some travel from the Silver King and vintage Chris Vanini, and of course, the craziness that transpired Friday night with The Rock appearing live alongside Cody Rhodes, setting a new course for WrestleMania 41. If you have not already, we already have a WWE podcast in the episode feed for you. We did an instant reaction to The Rock and Cody moment from SmackDown on Friday. All you need to do, hit the feed, make sure you listen to that at some point, ideally before you listen to this episode. So you can pause and go over to that right now. But I think it also holds up if you listen to this show and hear our second look takes about Rock and Cody, and then go back to listen to that instant reaction on the back end. But if I did have to choose, if you're letting the Silver King dictate what you're listening to right now, I would pause this, go and listen to that. We received a ton of feedback saying it was not just our best episode of the year, which of course we're only 2 months into the year, but it will be our best episode of the year, meaning through the next 10 months, that I don't need to ask at the end of the year, hey, what's your favorite episode? It is the Rock and Cody one. Whether that is true and holds up for the remaining 10 months, we of course will see, but we appreciate the great feedback on social media via email. We've got some comments on YouTube as well, Spotify. It means a lot to us, and I'm glad that so many of you already have listened to that episode, because we definitely put a lot of work into it on a night where we do not usually tape the podcast. Off the top here, allow us to remind you that Getting Over
is all about Defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
Go back to being marks for the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, vintage Chris Vanini, and the Getting Over Wrestling podcast in its entirety. Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And we told you about a week ago that we just wanted 20 more reviews to get us to 500 by the time WrestleMania 41 comes around. Our total right now is showing at 484, but that's odd to us because we actually got 4 new reviews over the last week. I'm going to read them to you right now. So I'm just going to count the total. That's 3 from last week, 4 from this week. That's 7. We're 13 away from hitting 500 as far as I am concerned. I'd love to see the number turn, but if the new reviews are coming in, that really is what matters most. Zach1416 said, my go-to wrestling podcast, longtime listener, huge fan of Getting Over. I've tried other wrestling podcasts, but always find myself heading straight back to this one. Adam and Chris keep me up to date on all the weekly storylines, present them in a manner that allows me to develop my own thoughts on what has transpired. This is a must listen, especially if you're someone who struggles to always watch the many hours of wrestling TV in a given week and does not want to fall behind. Thanks, and keep up the great work. Thanks to you, Zach1416. We greatly appreciate that. Patty Plankton 15 wrote in, great show, ! My husband and I have been listening to this show since the beginning and always enjoy its thorough analysis and insight. It's not a car ride without the Silver King. Well, hopefully I am not having you veer anywhere off the road, but we greatly appreciate you saying that, Patty. A couple more 5-star reviews. Nicole_Desai. I truly hope I said that correct. If that is a name, high quality pod plus people, 5 stars. Forget about the fact that this is the most detailed and thoughtful pro wrestling podcast out there. You can just tell that Adam and Chris are good dudes. In a time where there are a lot of podcasts about a lot of things, this one deserves attention. There's been a lot of days in my life that have become more enjoyable listening to these guys talk with genuine enthusiasm about pro wrestling. Could go on and on. Appreciate y'all. Raised fist emoji. We greatly appreciate you, and I seriously appreciate that comment. We do this for fun. It's an ad-free show. We certainly hope to make money through other avenues that, of course, we will discuss with you coming up soon. But we do this because we do have that genuine enthusiasm about pro wrestling and WWE. And we know so many of you out there share it. And we believe you deserve a podcast that attacks the product critically. And we're critical. And I promise you, we are going to be critical on this episode, as we were on Friday's episode. But it attacks it critically while still putting into perspective that this is meant to be fun and entertaining. And we all deserve that. Also, TC Sizzle, Mount Rushmore, 5 stars, longtime fan, detailed, thoughtful, and fun. All 4 spots on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling pods. Good chemistry among the gents makes the show flow like the gross ales Adam drinks during instant takes. There's nothing gross about the beer that the Silver King drinks. I'm a Heyman guy, but more importantly, a Vanini guy. Thanks for the content, fellas. We appreciate you, T Sizzle, and we appreciate all 4 of you. Not only that, we acknowledge you.
Acknowledge.
Big acknowledgement right there.
Acknowledge.
Now, you'll notice, despite Vanini getting a shout out right there, you have not heard his voice yet on this episode. He will be here. There's no question about it. We've had a couple scheduling issues just getting this particular episode of the show off the ground. He will be joining us for the main event and the WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. So again, Chris will be along for the ride momentarily, but we still have a little bit more business to take care of. I want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get every audio episode directly into your ear holes there, if you choose that as your platform, we're posting a ton of video clips from prior interviews, and we've seen some stuff do great numbers. Our interview with Becky Lynch, we're currently in the process of posting some of those clips, so make sure you check it out. We need to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and a certain number of watch hours. We're getting crazy close to both those numbers. Once we do, we can monetize that channel, start bringing in a couple bucks here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So please subscribe to our YouTube at Getting Overcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send in questions and comments for the show that we will read on the air on Twitter. You can vote in pre- and post-show polls around premium live events like WWE Elimination Chamber. And of course, it is just a great way for us to interact with you all week. So again, social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Now, I did not mention it off the top, but as always, this is a loaded edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We have the main event, the good, the bad, and the ugly, your WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, and if time happens to allow, the last word, all coming up.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
And really, the most notable item surrounding WWE over the last week has been the latest Twitter campaign, I guess you can call it, to improve the booking of the women's division. This all started from a Fightful report stating WWE women were frustrated about a lack of focused storytelling and really just an overall concentration on a select few women as opposed to the division as a whole. This obviously echoes much of what we've said previously on this show, but it's important to understand this was very much not a hashtag give divas a chance type of deal, and the amount of time women get on WWE TV right now is far better than it ever has been before. But as we've stated numerous times, all you have to do is look over to NXT to see a women's division being utilized properly. Not only are they on par with the men, they frequently exceed them when it comes to TV time, storyline progression, the number of talents featured on any given episode of television. It's fair to say the star power of the men in WWE on average is still higher. But the company should be making every effort to put women on the same level. And that's even if you look at it solely from a corporate standpoint. They are literally wasting money-earning opportunities by not having more women regularly featured in prominent roles. A women's match has not main evented a night of WrestleMania since 2021. Now, you may say, well, Silver King, let's be fair, okay? They had Stone Cold Steve Austin in one of those main events. The Usos against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in a tag team title match that you guys said needed to main event, and Roman Reigns and The Rock against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, all immensely deserving of that spot. And you would be 100% right in saying that. Here's my contention. Which women's match since 2021 was creatively booked to the level that it deserved to have one of those spots? I would argue Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair is the only one. And that's not a problem with the women. That's a problem with creative. Because even if a women's match doesn't main event one of the nights of WrestleMania, we as viewers and fans should be able to point to any WrestleMania card and say, okay, it didn't main event, but that one should have. And we haven't even been able to say that recently. Now, again, all of this said, the last hour of Raw on Monday night, it was proof the division is in a better spot than ever before. And that's with Becky Lynch and Asuka still out. Bianca Belair has been in the tag team division. Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair are just getting back. And some of the best women in this entire company are in NXT right now. But there is still so much room for growth and improvement with more concentration on storytelling. They need character development for these women badly. Why should I give a shit about Michin? They haven't really given me a reason. I feel like we started to see it a little bit on Friday night with Zelina Vega, and we'll talk about that later in the episode. So I took this overall reporting and online reaction with a relative grain of salt, all things considered, but it did appropriately bring up a topic that has been much discussed right here, needed more attention on it, and hopefully now that it has seen some light, WWE will be better off for it. And you know what? Vintage was going to join us for the main event. Looks like he is ready. So Vintage Chris Vanini, welcome to the program. We're right in the middle of our news segment here on the WWE edition. Of course, the main event, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, and the last word all coming up. But welcome to the show. You have a busy Tuesday ahead of you. So glad that you could make the time right here and Ultimate Preview Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, I feel like this Elimination Chamber kind of snuck up on us, or at least snuck up on me. But it's interesting. It was an interesting weekend of WWE content, that's for sure.
It absolutely was. You know what? I think the break between Survivor Series War Games and Royal Rumble, and then Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, is so significant that to go Royal Rumble to Elimination Chamber, like within 30 days of one another, it is a little jarring. And I believe that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's probably it. I feel like I was just at the Rumble, even though I do know it was quite a few weeks ago.
Dude, I feel like I was just at the Super Bowl, and that was 2 weeks ago at this point. So no, I'm totally with you. Now, we were in the middle of discussing some WWE news, kind of coming to the end of it, actually. I had a couple items left. So, Chris, I've acclimated to this black ad-covered mat for Raw. Don't get me wrong. It's way too much. It's a total eyesore with all the ads, but I've been worn down. I say this for a reason. I will get to that reason in a moment, but something stuck out to me about the mat Monday night. When Raw opened, I noticed there was no WWE logo in the center of the ring. And then when the Penta match happened, which was the second segment on the show, there was a WWE logo in the center of the ring. So given the first segment involved Logan Paul, it has me wondering, because of that Prime sponsorship, is there something in this dude's contract that he can't be in the ring without the Prime logo in the center, or with anything other than the Prime logo in the center? Because what other explanation would there be for them doing this? And why would that even happen? Like, why wouldn't he be in the ring with the WWE logo, which is the company that's paying him? So I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I did notice it on Monday night.
That is weird, but they don't do the Prime logo on the mat anywhere, right?
They only do it for, I think, still premium live events, but definitely not television.
They didn't for the Rumble though.
Oh, so yeah, I don't get it then. Like,
they had something else in the middle of the ring. I looked it up. I can't quite tell it. It looked like it might have been, it was Cricket. Cricket was in the middle of the ring.
Oh, that sounds right. So why would this be the case?
No idea. That's really weird. He's obviously on WWE and calling himself a full-timer. So
right. And I'm assuming it had nothing to do with CM Punk, who was the other person in the ring. So it could only be Logan. It was weird. It was weird. I sent a picture of it on social media, both of our accounts. You can take a look if you, for some reason, think the Silver King's crazy. I promise you I'm not. But my point about the black mat was to juxtapose it to the blue mat on SmackDown. Friday night, I was staring at this thing. I will never like it, ever. It's far too dark blue with the logo in the middle. The shit looks like an AR graphic. It's in full color. It's not blended at all. The whole thing looks like shit. It's actually crazy that the regular PLE mats, and you got to see this live at Royal Rumble, they bring a sense of relief because they're so normal looking. I prefer the insanely busy Raw black mat to the SmackDown one. That's how ugly it is. But I don't know. I just had to say it off the top. I couldn't get it out of my mind while watching SmackDown on Friday night. And the quality of that show is probably why I was so concentrated on the mat.
They're both terrible. They've been terrible the whole time. I still think the black one is worse because it has a million different things on it that are different colors. It sticks out like crazy. I think they're both terrible.
I just think the blue is such an ugly color blue when they have a light blue mat and they could just use that. It's still blue, you know?
It is, but it's fewer colors that my eyes are being hit with,
I guess.
so I can handle it better.
Yeah, I suppose. But look, I kind of mentioned SmackDown, and that's really what I wanted to talk to you about before we get into the main event and the rest of the show. You know, we discussed the primary segment on SmackDown during our bonus show, the instant reaction to The Rock and Cody Rhodes. But Chris, Friday night was a terrible wrestling program, almost from start to finish. It was easily the worst WWE show of 2025. It was one of the worst, period, under Paul Levesque's creative. It might have actually been the worst since he's been in total and complete control. There was almost nothing redeeming about that 3-hour episode on Friday. You did not love Raw last week, but SmackDown made that look like Shakespeare. I saw some folks immediately jumping to Road Dogg because he's apparently back as head writer, one of two on that show, and they said that's the reason it was bad. I'm not going to discount that necessarily, but Triple H is the creative lead. He's the one approving everything. Both shows, Raw and SmackDown, have lead writers. I don't care who was responsible at the end of the day. SmackDown was awful, and it must improve in a major way because the show feels completely lifeless.
Dude, both of these shows suck right now, frankly. Like, Raw has a little bit more going for it, and especially this episode of Raw had a couple of really good things, but I'd say less than half of what even was on Raw was good. And like, my brother just texted me out of the blue after Raw, and he goes, it feels like AEW last year where stuff is happening, but nothing's building toward anything. And I just like, it's become a chore to watch this again. And I don't know why. SmackDown is easily worse because it's a 2-hour show that they have now had to stretch to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they clearly don't have the ability to do that. Raw is 2.5, and however you want to count the commercials, it's much easier to get through it now because 3 is a lot. And so SmackDown in particular is worse, but man, both these shows are not good right now. Like really, it might be a low point in the Triple H creative era.
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. I disagree even comparing the two, though, because like I said, there's legitimately nothing redeemable about SmackDown. And we're going to discuss it in the good, the bad, and the ugly. You guys will understand exactly what we're talking about. There's nothing redeemable about the Blue brand. On Raw Monday night, I would say the first 50% was still way better than SmackDown, but it did leave a lot to be desired. However, the second half of the show banged for me. Both women's title matches, I felt, were the two best segments the entire week in WWE. And we'll find out soon how you felt about Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, but that was sandwiched between. So the final 75 to 80 minutes of Raw, to me, that was the normal high quality WWE television we have been getting under Levesque. But the prior 3 hours of SmackDown and 60 to 75 minutes of Raw was, again, Raw wasn't totally dreadful, but SmackDown was. And when we're dating back the last 2 weeks, what it really feels like, it feels like WWE is in the doldrums right now. That it is just in this weird period where they don't want to start anything for WrestleMania because it's still 2 months away and they want to get to and past Elimination Chamber first. But because of that, nothing exciting is happening on television.
Correct. And I saw you had posted on social media kind of crapping on both the crowds in New Orleans for SmackDown and Cincinnati for Raw. I got to defend the people here. They were not giving good shows. And yes, it got better on Raw, and I do think that...
And the crowd got better, though. The crowd did get better in the second half of Raw. Yeah.
I really think... Exactly, which goes to my point where I think a lot of this really is the show is... There's not a lot to cheer for on the show. It's really weird what they're doing. And so I don't blame these crowds for not having much to cheer for.
Normally, I would agree with you, right? Because we're too harsh on the crowd, but if it's not entertaining, then what do you want them to do? But these crowds for months now They haven't needed that much to get excited, but they would just get excited for the star. So even if the segments were bad, you'd get a really loud reaction to CM Punk. You'd get a really loud reaction to Cody Rhodes, and The Rock was in New Orleans, and it was before he even went off like the deep end in his promo. They were not very loud for him. And we got a couple messages on social media, Blue Sky and Twitter. I'm sorry, I'm kind of doing this off the cuff. I didn't see who sent what, but they pointed out this is a consequence of WWE raising their ticket prices to an absolute absurd degree. And they have priced out the hardcore, passionate fans in lieu of people who can afford some of these tickets. And I am not saying that's the reason, but it definitely has something to do with it. I believe those points that were made are absolutely legitimate role players into the way the crowds have been over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you combine a lot of things, and it leads to an uneven show, a poor crowd, and pricing out some fans who might be helping your shows. So it kind of all goes together.
I found one of them, Tom Valentino at one Tom Valentino on Blue Sky. So shout out to you, Tom. That was a great point you made. But again, so, I did think the crowds were both. I mean, New Orleans was terrible. Cincinnati was extremely rough. It did get better, and it got better as the show got better. But even situations on that program, like they were chanting, holy shit, and this is awesome, right? Usually when that happens, people are out of their chairs going wild while simultaneously chanting. They were all doing it while seated, not clapping. So it was like performative almost. Like, oh, something cool happened. We'll chant, this is awesome. But we're not actually making the noise and getting out of our seats and going crazy like you should be at a wrestling show. So I just wanted to kind of clarify my point on that. We'll give them a break because both shows weren't great. SmackDown terrible, as I mentioned. But nevertheless, glad we discussed it here off the top. Chris, let's get into the rest of the show. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly, the WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, if time allows, the last word, all coming up. But we got to kick this off, as we always do, by sliding into the main event.
This is the main event.
Now, despite us spending twice as much time discussing the already long confrontation between The Rock and Cody Rhodes on Friday night during our special Instant Reaction podcast, allow this to serve as a reminder that you need to listen to that show if you have not already. There was still some meat left on the bone regarding all of this. So let's open up the main event with a second look at the Rock Cody stuff. And yes, we will address it a third time, kind of, with our predictions in the Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. So going back to Friday night, a couple additional points I wanted to make, and I would love to get your takes on them as well, Chris. The timing of this storyline with Cody and Rock, we spent a lot of time talking about it as it related to potentially John Cena and CM Punk, but the timing actually works quite well with Cody coming off that CM Punk confrontation before the Royal Rumble and then the Kevin Owens feud. He's probably at his lowest point when it comes to self-belief, his overall mental state. There's been a lot of talk about the title weighing on him. That was addressed again Monday night. Mini spoiler alert. So I almost wish that was a greater part of what Rock said. I mean, there was a million ways we could pick apart what he said and give him suggestions on what we could have added and subtracted. But if he had noted, hey man, like you're down in the dumps. We're friends now. I see how much the title is weighing on you. Let me make your life easier. That would have played so much better. And it was the natural progression of the story that they're telling, but they just didn't get to that story beat in the promo.
No, because what happens on screen is apparently not as important for whatever storyline is going to involve The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and saw clips of it and stuff again to try to get a better read of it. And one of the things Rock says to Cody is like, I can give you everything you want. We don't know what Cody wants. All we've ever known that Cody wants was the WWE champion.
And to be the top guy. And to be the top guy in the company. Right. Which he is.
And he got it.
Yeah.
As far as we know, based on everything we know about Cody, he has everything he wants, which again goes back to the lack of defining what Rock is offering.
Exactly.
That continued to be a problem.
It did indeed. I was speaking with Luis, who has been helping cut and edit our videos for YouTube. So shout out, Luis, by the way. We greatly appreciate all the work you've been doing with us. We were commiserating over the weekend when I came to a realization about how this segment should have played out. The end should have been The Rock saying, I don't want the title. Then leaning in, whispering something to Cody while putting a finger in his chest. That way, Rhodes' reactions would have sold the story rather than Rock needing to literally verbalize the word soul. I know there were a dozen ways to improve that segment. We just talked a moment ago about what could have happened with Rock mentioning the title weighing on Cody, but this was another one. This was the exact way it should have played out. He points at his chest, and you leave SmackDown on Friday wondering, what did Rock whisper to Cody? And instead, they verbalized that he wants the soul, like he's Beelzebub or something like that.
Yeah, you got hung up on the soul word. I didn't. That one didn't bother me as much. Pro wrestling has never been subtle, exactly. But what you're suggesting there
would have been better though.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Now I saw a comment out there that Rock kept turning from face to heel and back during the segment. I thought the same on first watch, and I know you rewatched, like you said. So I suffered for all of you, and I watched it back. It appears to me like it's not him switching characters. It's supposed to be one character that was poorly conveyed. Smiling corporate, face on the outside, asshole final boss below the surface. Which is why he's trying to sing, but you can't sing with me. And he's trying to be nice to Cody, but he snaps at the fan who tries to interrupt him. And then he puts the smile back on his face and gets back to, we're best friends. He wasn't shifting between characters so much as he was trying to show that he's two-faced. The problem is he's not a good actor. And that brings me to my other point. The simple fact is, Chris, The Rock can no longer be trusted these days to go out there and improv. It worked when he was an active wrestler. And even last year when he was in the shit on a weekly basis, it was okay. But popping in after months removed and just taking 25 to 35 minutes to say a bunch of nonsense is not entertaining. To be like an NFL quarterback, a star quarterback who hadn't played in a year, walking back in, taking a snap in week one without even practicing a single snap. It doesn't work that way.
Which is why cutting those 45-minute promos on Instagram last year.
Yes, it gave him reps.
Exactly.
Yes.
Not everything in all 45 minutes was good. He was working it out in real time. He could take his time, mess up something, change it, figure out what works, and then take it to television.
And that's what he did.
So good.
He was repetitive on television. He said a lot of the stuff in those social media promos on TV.
Yes, you could see him working it out in real time, and he got to a really good place. He hasn't done that this time.
No, he hasn't. Like, this is not sharp-minded 28-year-old Dwayne Johnson. This is a 52-year-old dude who is memorizing lines for acting gigs. He's selling tequila. He's selling energy drinks. He's traveling constantly. He's being pulled in a multitude of directions. He's got to tighten the fuck up. That's the truth. That's what we got to say to Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, the final boss, whatever he wants to be called. Tighten the fuck up if you're going to be on television. Simple as that. Now, we spoke a lot about John Cena and CM Punk potentially turning heel, and we will make our predictions later on what's going to happen during Elimination Chamber, what Cody will say to Rock, and what's going to happen with the storyline. I felt like we completely overlooked someone critical, though, during our Friday show. Drew McIntyre. Now, look, I've been massively disappointed with Drew's booking of late, and I was probably never more disappointed than what happened on Friday. But let's put his recent storyline in context a little bit. He confronts Paul Heyman as a representative for Roman Reigns. Basically, he says he's going to become the bloodline hunter. Then he loses to Jey Uso. He confronts Cody Rhodes for overlooking him in his promo last week. Then he loses to Jimmy Uso. I promise I will talk about that later. But let's not forget, McIntyre just re-signed with WWE. And what happened when he re-signed? He was surprised at a big dinner with a gift, a Claymore. And who bought him that Claymore? Who announced his re-signing on social media? Dwayne Johnson. Who commiserated with Drew backstage during Raw on Netflix and put them flinging curse words at one another live on social media? Dwayne Johnson. And who are we not talking about winning Elimination Chamber? Who have I been saying was missing from the Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk booking? Who was eliminated by Damian Priest from the Royal Rumble with the story immediately going out about him throwing a tantrum and another that a singles match with Priest was the plan at Mania and people were disappointed by it. Drew McIntyre. So I'm not saying McIntyre is the move here, but those are a lot of pieces that easily come together to create a compelling narrative. Plus, he's already heel, and he would not need to turn like Cena or Punk. And he's a natural rival for Reigns, should he be angered by all of this. So if he comes out and beats Cody, all of a sudden you have a McIntyre Reigns feud ready to go. So what do you think about all those pieces coming together for Drew McIntyre?
I don't see it happening now. If you want to tell me leading into WrestleMania 42 with a Rock Roman match, we've got some sort of Survivor Series match that Drew McIntyre and Rock are on the same team, I might buy that. Again, not to spoil it, I see no way in which Drew McIntyre is coming out of Elimination Chamber with the win. Then again, everything The Rock does on Instagram is canon now, apparently. So who knows?
Now, before we move on, here's something Rock said at that joke of a press conference that we should address.
In the world of pro wrestling, as we all know, like everything will culminate to a match. Like whatever happens, it will end up in the ring. What I really love about this rare air space that we've gotten to with the character of the final boss is like this white whale unicorn in that with Final Boss and Cody Rhodes, it's not about the WWE title. It's not about having a match. It's not about punching or kicking or bleeding or any of that is so part of our world. It never has to culminate to a match. That's a really special place to be, I think, like creatively, and when you just think character-wise and how much fun you could have. I grew up in the business, so as did Cody. His dad and my dad were friends. They're no longer with us. But I think to be able to have a storyline and two characters who are very popular, to never have to get in the ring for a match, but yet still hold this really unique, compelling, like off-putting, and it's kind of weird, and he wants his soul. What does that mean? I love it, and I loved every moment, and Cody did too as well. We had a few tequilas after tonight.
So WWE posted this on their official social media account. There's two things I need to say about this. One, look, I know kayfabe is dead in 2025, and they did the whole behind the curtain documentary, and this was a press conference. But why are you getting up to a podium and sharing 20 minutes after a show ends that the major segment that is supposed to be intriguing and compelling, even though it was wrought with issues, why are you telling us it was all bullshit? And why would you add that at the end, that you guys went and had drinks after this was over? Who does that benefit? What does that enhance? I don't understand, Chris. Like, I'll talk about, and we should talk about, that it never has to culminate in a match part of this. But what benefit is provided by him saying that, number one? WWE publishing that, number two. It's one thing if it goes on the YouTube and, let's say 10,000 people who are actually watching it live see it. But why are you sharing that on social media and saying, hey, that big moment from 30 minutes ago that like got all of you talking? And of course, the assumption would be that it went well, which it didn't. But that moment, it's all bullshit. We're just telling you a story. Like, don't care. There's no reason for you to care.
Oh, it's the same thing they did at the Netflix premiere. They were like, hey, by the way, this is fake. We know it's fake. Don't worry about it. Anybody who's tuning in to wrestling.
But that at least could have played into what they were telling us Friday. Hey, we're friends now.
But it all comes together because at that point on that show is when The Rock said to Cody, you're great for carrying the company, doing all these things. And all of us were like, what the heck are you talking about? Are we not doing kayfabe anymore? And that that first episode of Netflix and the way The Rock talked to Cody has led to this storyline here.
Right.
And so it's like, this is again where he's being Dwayne Johnson. Nobody wants Dwayne Johnson in the WWE. They want The Rock. And this is just very, very frustrating.
Yeah. It's like, even if we didn't like the segment, which we didn't, they did in many ways rectify the Raw on Netflix situation and what happened on social media with the tequila by saying, hey, we're friends. We're not hiding it anymore. And now I want you to turn to the dark side and do all that shit. But then they just went ahead and ruined it again. Like immediately after SmackDown went off the air. I couldn't believe that they did this. I know he's on the board, and apparently Ari Emanuel loves him. He's so quick to tell us that. And Nick Khan loves him, and he's best friends with Triple H again. Like, that's all great. Someone's got to sit this guy down and say, dude, you can take it far, and we're going to give you a lot of leeway, but you can't do these 5 or 6 things. You got to rein it in a little bit. That press conference was a joke, number one. Number two, every single thing that was asked of him during that press conference, he turned into one of his stories about Flex Kavana and $7 and Weehoo or whatever the fuck he said. Chihu, whatever his thing is. That or Zoa Energy or Terramana Tequila. Like, it was one thing after another. We don't want any of that, dude. If you want to be the final boss, you want to be The Rock, if you want to be the board member and say some shit like Triple H has to kind of sometimes say some shit corporately, that's okay. But don't take us out of the fun. We're trying to enjoy this.
So I didn't mind the story part because he's speaking to a bunch of local media, many of whom may or may not know much about wrestling. And I understand, like, I could kind of tell he felt like he might need to explain a couple things to the audience or to the reporters. Now, he went too far.
I just think he does that because he likes talking, but okay.
It does. But I that in the moment when I saw that, I was like, I get it, because he's talking to a local TV guy, and local TV guy may not know Flex Cavani.
Fair enough.
That part didn't bother me as much. But it's I wouldn't even say like Ari Emanuel has to sit him down and say these things. This is just what WWE is doing now. Again, they did it on the Netflix Open. Another thing we didn't really talk about on here, and we don't really need to, but I was alerted to this by some friends and my brother. WWE has been posting PBR bull riding stuff on the YouTube. WWE YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And fans are getting really annoyed by it. The corporate synergy on the YouTube channel, on the show, is like out of control.
It's down our throats at this point. Like, PBR bull riders on every episode of Raw. I don't think there was one actually this Monday night, so that was a nice break. But these people that no one knows, like, you're trying to put them as celebrities. We don't know them, dude. Like, these PBR people shoving them.
Just show us bull riding highlights. That's cool.
If you want to promote the event, exactly. If you want to promote the event, show us like 25 seconds of action. You do all your self-promotion stuff, WWE shop and the cards and the video games.
WWE YouTube channel.
I mean, doing it live on there just because there were more followers, I guess, and subscribers. God, I mean, yeah. I imagine people that subscribe to the YouTube, I don't, were pissed off by that. Going back to this Dwayne Johnson thing, though, what I really wanted to talk about was that other line. It never has to culminate in a match. That has really sent some people, but I actually...
Including me. I mentioned it on our emergency show.
But you know what, Chris? I actually don't disagree with him on that. Like, there are plenty of things that happen in wrestling that don't culminate in matches. Just for one example, Braun Breaker being pissed off at Adam Pearce week after week. They did that for a long time. Yeah, Braun should want to kick his ass, but that's not Pearce's role. And if that's not going to be Rock's role when it comes to Cody, I'm okay with that. My problem is people took what Dwayne said literally there. What he meant is it doesn't need to culminate in a Rhodes Rock match, but obviously it's still going to culminate in a match of some kind. So I don't really have a problem with that statement, really, at all.
Well, I took it as Cody Rock ain't happening.
That's how I took it.
As part of this whole thing of like, you know what, we were going to do this. I was going to go for the belt, yada, yada. It's not happening. And here's how I'm going to explain it away. Yeah, it has to end in physicality with the people involved. That's why Vince McMahon had to get stunned by Stone Cold Steve Austin.
That was so unique, though. I can't.
And did a match with him. And Paul Heyman, every once in a while, you got to get your comeuppance. Linda McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, like the whole point is that they get their physical comeuppance at some point. And I'm sure we could. Cody could still crossroads Rock or something.
Of course.
We're probably going to get that.
Yes. But he's saying he's not saying it doesn't have to culminate in physicality. He's saying it doesn't have to culminate in a match. And by the way, Paul Heyman, I believe the only major bump that he took was through that table at Madison Square Garden. I don't think he's really physically done much of anything else recently.
It's another one of those things you just don't need to say it. Because like that is why we watch wrestling, to see the physical comeuppance.
I just found that
was very weird.
I found that so much less problematic though than the shit about, hey, Cody and I had a drink afterwards and look how cool we are. Like to me that was like a 4 out of 10. I wish he didn't say that, but like not the end of the world. The other one was like a 9. It was just like, what are you doing? All right, so that's our second look at Cody and Rock. And I'll reiterate, if for some reason you still haven't heard our instant reaction to that segment, it is in your podcast feed, ready for your ear holes. We've got a ton of incredible feedback on that episode. Some telling us, don't even ask us what our favorite episode of 2025 is going to be. It was that one. That's how much people liked it. So I appreciate all those kind words that we receive. But let's fast forward from Friday to Monday, because Cody was indeed on Raw. He opened the last half hour of the show saying he could explain The Rock's offer and desire for his soul, except he did not explain it. He said the decision affects his family. Then he said that Rock is offering him everything he would otherwise scratch and claw to get, but now he wouldn't have to do the work. He said that on Friday. So that was like one of the things that was actually clear from Friday. Seth Rollins interrupted wearing, let me try to describe this, a maroon Matrix-style raincoat robe with matching baggy pants. This guy was really nailing it with the somewhat unique but still kind of normal outfits of late. This was not one of them. How he did not sweat his balls off under the bright lights, I have no idea. Rollins recalled that they have not been in the ring together for 10 months, and he said he would love to praise his run over the last year, but he can't. Instead, Rollins asked, "What the hell are you thinking?" reminding Cody about everything that happened a year ago involving Rock and Roman Reigns. Rollins said Rhodes not slapping the shit out of The Rock in the moment on Friday was a slap in his own face, meaning Seth. Rollins actually made a ton of salient points here, but Rhodes snapped back that Seth's soul may already be compromised given the way he attacked Cody, ran him out of WWE back in the day, and turned his back on the Shield. Seemed like a heel move there from Cody, but then Rhodes put him over. He said, "Thank you for being my Shield at WrestleMania 40, despite having a torn apart knee and a back." Cody called him the MVP of WrestleMania 40. Seth came back saying he's made mistakes in the past because he was filled with hate, but he doesn't want to hate Cody. Rollins said he wants to face the same Rhodes who beat him at WrestleMania 38, beat him inside Hell in a Cell, and beat Roman Reigns. Not a soulless shell of that guy. And then Rollins closed, "I'm not coming for your soul, but I am coming for your title." Apples to apples, Chris, this was 1,000,000 times better than the Rock segment on Friday. Almost entirely due to Rollins, who added the passion and the energy and the context that the entire storyline needed. Forget being MVP of 40. This dude might be the MVP of 41 at this rate. That said, it still left a little something to be desired, largely because of the points that Seth actually made. Given everything that happened the last year, how could Cody even be considering this offer? What crystallized that point even further is that Rhodes' solo promo, which preceded Rollins entering, was completely empty. All he did was reiterate Rock's offer. He didn't explain what it would mean to him if he gave up his soul, and he didn't really give us any idea, nor should he, which way he was going to go, but he didn't express conflict in any meaningful way. What I actually wish happened here is that Seth took this a little bit further. He related Cody's dilemma now specifically to what he experienced selling out the Shield and becoming Triple H's corporate champion. Rhodes mentioned the Shield bit. Rollins seemed to reference it back, but they didn't follow through with the details because Rollins literally experienced an identical story. That would have amplified this so much. And the reason that was needed, as I said Friday night during our instant reaction podcast, is that speaking about the soul in specific terms, as if Dwayne Johnson was the devil, was ridiculous. If Rock had whispered that Friday and we entered Monday wondering what he whispered, then you can have Rollins straight up assume what he said. Then he could have asked Cody, "Are you really going to sell your soul, metaphorically, to get tangible riches promised by Rock, like Rollins once did to Triple H?" That would have worked so much better. So I'll reiterate here, an improvement, no doubt, a much, much better segment, apples to apples. But if Friday had been better, then Monday would have been even better.
Well, they again didn't specifically explain what Rock is offering to Cody because Cody never explained it. What does that mean to get things you don't want to scratch and claw for anymore? You are the WWE champion, front of the video game, face of the company. Like, what do you want? I don't know. He still hasn't told us. And The Rock didn't tell us. So I'm still having that lack of a connection of what exactly The Rock is offering. It's not like the Acolyte Protection Agency, which would offer you protection in exchange for something, or the corporation, which would have a bunch of goons out to help you win matches and do like cheat to win. I don't know what Rock is offering yet. And that's very frustrating to not have gotten that the second time through. It's felt like Cody was going to get there, and then Seth came out, and we never went back to it.
But like Rollins could have said, like, Cody, what could he even be offering you that you don't already have?
Exactly.
And then Cody could have said, Seth, you know, you've held this title before, and when you held it for however many days when he was with the Authority, you had a lot of help. I'm doing this all on my own, and it is weighing on me. Every single title defense, every single meet and greet, so on and so forth. He's offering me the chance to see my family more, to not have to worry financially about Liberty's college, you know, whatever the hell. I'm kind of making this up on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
But if they had that interaction, then all of a sudden you're coming out of this and saying, now I understand why Cody is actually perplexed about this. Because otherwise, all that Rock said on Friday is, dude, I got 500 million followers. You got a few million. Do you want more followers? Like,
yeah, right.
That was really the crux of what he said, because he was so terrible in the segment, right?
And like, also, by the way, Cody has a sponsorship with a whiskey company or whatever. Or
yeah.
with that, whatever
Wheaties.
that company is. So he's even got that. But
not Wheaties.
Also,
Wheatley.
before
Wheaties.
Before the vodka, I think it was. Before Cody became a pro wrestler, he tried to be an actor. I've talked to his acting coach for the story I wrote this year. Like, say that. I want to be an actor more. I tried it. I failed at it. I want to do it again. Rock's got connections. Like, just give us the basic stuff. This was my biggest problem with the thing on Friday. They didn't address it on Monday, which is, what is Rock offering? You can't say soul. That doesn't mean anything.
Well, he's not even offering the soul. He wants his soul. What's he getting in return?
Yeah, like they skipped over the most important part of the whole thing.
Like,
twice.
The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Like, there was a deal to be made in that song. It was very clear. We're going to make you an all-time guitar player, right? And you're going to give me your soul for eternity. It was very cut and dry. They're trying to do that here, and there's just no explanation of what the other side gets. Yeah. Like, okay, we understand that in general, riches and opportunity and popularity and whatever, but and I'm not saying that everything needs to be spelled out, right? Because what do we talk about all the time, man? Like, wrestling sometimes beats you over the head with shit, but there is a wide gulf between beating you over the head and doing, I'm going to say, somewhat the bare minimum to give you details in a story.
Like Cody said at the beginning, reading between the lines. And I was like, no, we need the lines. We don't have the lines yet.
Well, Cody shouldn't be reading between the lines. We should be, but Cody should know.
Yes. Also, Cody, in recounting what happened on Friday, said The Rock's name and paused and didn't get any reaction from the crowd.
Right.
I thought he was waiting for boos or something. He got nothing on The Rock's mention, which I found really interesting.
Well, the fans just aren't captivated by this, right? Like,
no.
You see what happens when a crowd gets roused, when Punk and McIntyre are going back and forth in a promo segment, and you just feel it building and building. And that happened again, by the way, with the Logan Paul and CM Punk segment on Raw, which we'll talk about in a bit, where like you said, oh, wow, they're going to try to do something to get the crowd going. And they just didn't give a shit about Logan Paul. You can't force the crowd to care about certain people and certain storylines if you're not doing a good enough job telling them. So the failure on Friday impacted the success of this on Monday. But Chris, I do want to kind of wrap up by pointing out again, this was way, way better. And Rollins was fantastic. They just needed like 10 to 15% more to take us all the way there.
I mean, it was fine. Like, I didn't come out of this being like, all right, I'm totally on board with Rock Cody.
I'm not saying that.
Go.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was way better, and it repaired, maybe 50% to 60% of the issues, I would say.
I guess.
Separate from that, look, Cody and Seth, when they're in the ring together, tremendous chemistry between both of them. And I don't want it this year, but I would be down for a remix of their feud in a year or two, with Rollins coming out on top, winning a title, and getting his like retribution on Cody. I don't know how it would happen, who would be the face, who would be the heel, how it would go. But that is not a program that we should like never see again just because they already did 3 or 4 matches.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Now, Chris is going to jump off the horn briefly before we get to our WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, but he will be back for that momentarily. So stay tuned. But before we get to that WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, we still have a ton left to discuss. But first, allow the Silver King to remind you.
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, instant reactions to every major show. We call them the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling. Also, exclusive news analysis posts every week. You can get it by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, supporting the continuation of this show and just giving us a little financial incentive to keep on going. I did want to shout out Eric Montgomery, who became a new yearly member. He said, enjoyed the pod since its beginnings, decided to officially become a Getting Overhead. Looking forward to the additional news and insights. And I also wanted to shout out Sean Riley, who became a monthly member. So 2 new official Getting Overheads. We greatly appreciate and acknowledge you.
Acknowledge. Big acknowledgement right there. Acknowledge.
With all of that said, let's get into our full breakdown of everything else that happened across Raw and SmackDown, save for what we will be discussing during the WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, which itself is still coming up, and there are timestamps in the episode description. I did forget to mention that off the top. Regardless, it is now time for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And I'm sorry, Miss Rosie Perez, I call a spade, it just is what it is. But you can't give credit to anything dude says. Same dude to give you ice and you own some shorty. It's time to wake up the dead. You sound a little naive in them articles that I read.
And I'll tell you what, most weeks we don't always necessarily hit good, bad, and ugly. I promise you this week, we will hit the big 3. Solo Sikoa arrived at the arena on SmackDown saying the Samoan spike last week was an accident. Jacob Fatu said if it wasn't an accident, he wouldn't even be standing there right now. Fatu then demanded Sikoa team with him since he hasn't been putting in work like Jacob and Tama Tonga have, to which Solo agreed, saying he loved him. Jacob again did not reply in kind. Cody and Damian Priest later shook hands, sharing pride over both walking out of WrestleMania 40 as champions last year, with Priest saying he'll be going at Rhodes after Chamber, as if that was like some revelation. It's literally the dude's only option if he was to win the Chamber match. Braun Strowman then came in saying Priest got lucky last week, but they actually had this real decent back and forth, agreeing Priest took advantage of an opportunity, but deciding to unite to take down the heels in the main event. Both of these interactions were decently realistic, especially given the respective storylines. I thought it was a nice enough setup for the main event of a busy show. So we had Priest and Strowman against Sikoa and Fatu. While Solo was cutting a walk and talk promo to the ring, Jacob straight up interrupted him, cut a 10 times more energetic version, and demanded his music be hit. Joe Tessitore was super on point here. He was noticing the role reversal for them. So we saw it obviously backstage with Jacob taking command of everything, but we also saw it visually, not only in the action, but with Jacob in red walking in front of Sikoa, who was wearing black and looked diminished and in the background. In terms of the match,
4 big men slapping meat equals excitement.
And that's what we got, some excitement here. Strowman punched a chair out of Tonga's hand, giving Jacob an opportunity to knock him over the barricade with almost like a sling blade. Really cool spot. Priest did an old school crossbody and bell clap, but he stopped Samoan Spike with a choke, leading to a sequence where Fatu accidentally superkicked Sikoa. Braun then double pounced Jacob and Tama outside, with Priest beating Solo via South of Heaven. This was easily the best part of SmackDown, like by a mile. The storytelling with Solo and Jacob before and during the match was great. Priest and Strowman working surprisingly well together as a big, meaty team. Like, I could actually see them doing something with that. You usually want big and small, like Strowman and Ricochet was awesome. But there was something about Priest and Strowman I kind of liked. The finishing sequence, taking the fans on a little bit of a ride, was nice. It was a strong moment ending a disappointing show, but that should not discount how successful it was in its own silos, both as a story and as a match. This was definitely good. On the other hand, we had Jimmy Uso against Drew McIntyre. Jimmy got a walk and talk promo still using yeet. I guess technically he said no yeet, but I mean, get your own shit, dude. McIntyre did an Alabama slam into the steel steps early. Jimmy hit Whisper in the wind, and later a truly awful spear. Among the worst I have ever seen in the squared circle, even worse than some that Jay does. Drew hit a Glasgow kiss and talk trash to Jimmy, calling him the black sheep and saying he won't get any closer to WrestleMania. Jimmy then slowly countered an Alabama slam into a victory roll and got the upset 1, 2, 3. And this is another example, I just need to put it out there, of a finish to a match not being a roll-up, but people call it a roll-up. This was a victory roll. There's a small package, an inside cradle, a jackknife cover. There's a bunch of different pinning combinations that can end matches. Not all of them is a roll-up. A roll-up is a very specific, shitty thing that we see in professional wrestling. This was not one of them. But despite me giving that a pass, let's keep going here. McIntyre attacked immediately. He slammed Jimmy's head into the canvas, saying this means nothing to him. And then he was going to claymore him into the ring post, his head directly into the ring post, which might have actually been something, like an exclamation point to end this on, but officials stopped him. So he ran back and hit Claymore in the middle of the ring. This whole match, it looked like these two guys were working in quicksand. Now, a reason for that might have been McIntyre getting a ton of fluid drained from his knee 45 minutes before the show. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a break for the actual ring work. But having McIntyre lose this match 8 days before competing in Elimination Chamber, where he could potentially become the number one contender for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania, was frankly absurd. Like Vince McMahon booking. Why the hell is Jimmy, who has zero singles credibility, beating a main eventer in Drew, who won the world title and just went toe-to-toe with CM Punk in an absolute barn burner inside Hell in a Cell? A guy, by the way, who just time and again beats Sami Zayn in matches. But he's losing to Jimmy Uso. There are so many other dudes Jimmy could beat if he needs elevation. This was an absolute joke and piss poor creative. The post-match attack didn't make up for any of it. I tried to give a benefit of the doubt because McIntyre was moving brands, but I can't stomach this. Drew beat Sammy. Then he lost to Jay. He got eliminated by Priest during the Royal Rumble with no follow-up, by the way, potentially because they're changing plans. And now he just loses clean to Jimmy. This after that great in-ring segment with Heyman that I mentioned, in which he basically said he was going to be the Bloodline Hunter, and he comes out of that, this guy ready to take down the Bloodline one by one. He's losing to Jimmy via victory roll on television after losing to Jay over on Raw before moving over. Really, we're doing this 8 days before we're supposed to buy him as a potential WrestleMania main eventer? McIntyre's booking since the Punk feud has been straight up dog shit. He's been completely neutered moving from Raw to SmackDown. I cannot think of a single pairing that would now get me excited for a McIntyre match at WrestleMania, and that is nothing against him because he's a fantastic character and his ass was cooking every single week on Raw. They've moved him over to SmackDown. He is a shell of himself. He has no one with whom he can work that raises any excitement other than Cody, and we're not expecting that to be the feud. I don't really have any other choice. This was ugly.
Come on, Oos. It's a joke, right? It's a joke, Oos. You ribbing me?
Market zero.
Gunther hit the ring wearing tights, proud that he would be in action before saying the idea of Jey Uso challenging him is becoming more attractive because then he can end the Yeet Circus for good. Akira Tozawa was his opponent, and that was teased by Gunther staring at Alpha Babes while entering the venue. Gunther compared himself to Tozawa, uprooting their lives, reshaping their bodies to come to WWE, but he said Tozawa has basically turned himself into a clown. Gunther bullied him, and Tozawa hit a flurry of strikes before a big boot took his head off. He chopped the life out of Tozawa's chest, but he actually countered out of a powerbomb, hit a huge shotgun dropkick. Gunther came back with that. And then Tozawa countered into a code red. Gunther caught Tozawa flying for a Boston Crab, which he broke in the ropes. Gunther then just killed him. He refused the 3 count, knocked him out while dangling his body in midair. Otis got a huge pop stopping a post-match beatdown. This dude is beloved, but Gunther outsmarted him, and he was similarly about to make him pass out when Jay predictably saved. On one hand, this was good. It hit all the beats you want from a heel champion going against a popular babyface, continuing his bullying ways, all that stuff. Despite that, Tozawa was not made to look like a complete chump which is usually missed when it comes to squashes. It was also cool that Gunther addressed Tozawa's history and Akira got a few flashing moments. For those of you who don't know Akira Tozawa, prior to WWE, and I certainly was one of them when he joined for the Cruiserweight Classic and all of that, go ahead and Google, I hate to put it in these terms, but like Akira Tozawa fat or like Akira Tozawa Dragon Gate, and you will see a guy that had a huge beer belly and did not look anything near the way he looks right now. So the parallels that Gunther drew were actually legitimate, and it made me curious as to whether some fans might have actually Googled that on their own to see what he was talking about. But what bothered me out of all this is Gunther promised 10 weeks of hell to Jay. And so far, he mocked his entrance and he's beaten up Tozawa. That's not exactly hell for Jay. You know what I mean? So I'll give these a break because, again, this was a solid segment. I just hope this picks up intensity in a significant way once we get past Chamber next Monday. I presume we get Gunther Otis over one of the next 2 weeks, and that'll be fun for the fans. It'll give Jay another situation in which he can get a big pop by making a save. So this was good, and I'm grading it as such. But if you're going to promise 10 weeks of hell, I actually want to see you deliver hell, and we haven't seen any of that. You have 8 weeks left. Let's get to the hell. Jay later backstage gave Tozawa an ice pack, respecting his gumption. A-Town Down Under then confronted Jay, saying he only cares about himself. He yeeted and tried to leave. Grayson Waller stopped him, saying he's nothing more than a meme. So Jay yeeted again. Waller got in his face talking shit, saying everyone, including Gunther and all the smart fans online, know he's going to get embarrassed on the biggest stage of them all. He snapped back at Grayson, only for Austin Theory to get excited and do yeet along with Jay. They argued over him doing that, and Jay super kicked Waller in the face. I was pleased that Down Under and Waller got some feature time on the show, and giving Jay the comedy face squad as a little rub. I'm talking about Alpha Babes, which, again, the bottom third says Alpha Academy. They all wear shirts that say Alpha Babes. I don't know what their name is, but the fact that he got some rub with them or gave them some rub, that's a positive. But this was random as hell. It accomplished nothing. Maybe Jay fights Waller next week. Does he even need that? And was this a good enough reason to create that match? So I'm going to say a light bad, but don't get me wrong. It wasn't anything painful or terrible. On a much better show, I may have even given it a good, because you'd be rolling on such a positive mindset. But on this episode of Raw, seeing this, I was just why did this need to be what they did on the show? Rhea Ripley was interviewed in the crowd during Raw. She said she has an eye on Chamber, but remains fully focused on Io Sky next week, given it is true that she has never beaten Io one-on-one. However, they also haven't fought in 5 years, and she's become the most dominant woman in WWE since. Io stepped in promising to beat her next week, and she actually got some cheers for saying that. There was nothing wrong with this at all. I'm going to go light bad, only because Ripley continues to struggle with her promos. She is so slow and deliberate in her speech that it just doesn't sound natural. I'm not sure why she continues to speak that way. She's capable of much better. We saw her do much better in Judgment Day with Damian Priest when they were heels, and she was running kind of roughshod over the division and over the entire brand of Raw really at that time. But ever since she's kind of come back, she just does this slow, plodding, monotone type of promo, which I think is to make her seem like a badass, but it shows zero personality, and she has a ton of personality. So that's why this gets bad. Bianca Belair and Naomi got interviewed backstage on SmackDown, with Naomi deflecting any questions, saying they were positive Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez were the culprits behind Jade Cargill's attack. Belair said they'd get the job Monday night, and one of them would come out of Chamber competing for the women's world title at WrestleMania. Naomi versus Liv was scheduled. However, the heels attacked the champions before the bell, with Belair eating a Tahana bomb and Naomi taking Oblivion from Liv. Aldis later ejected them from the building, the heels, but they laughed in his face, which was actually kind of funny. Liv being so disrespectful to authority. Now, this was eons better than doing a 3-minute match, but frustrating that this and the men's tag team match were both advertised, yet neither of them actually delivered. We'll discuss that one in a bit. This was really the first time since they did the parking lot attack of Ripley on NXT that Liv and Raquel have come across strong. It was also pretty solid booking because it played into the whole notion of them attacking Jade from behind, attacking Bianca and Naomi from behind, yet doing it in public and taking credit for it lent credence to their denial of the Cargill beatdown. Beyond that, it got legitimate heat on the heels. It played into Monday's match. And I thought, well, maybe this is giving away the result because the heels stood tall on SmackDown. we now know the way Monday night's match turned out. I bet you some of you thought I'd go the other way on this one.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not going to do what everyone thinks I'm going to do. Flip out, man.
I actually thought it was good. It was probably one of the best thought out parts of SmackDown, despite the fact that they had limited time, both the backstage segment and what they did with Liv and Raquel in the ring. Finn Balor backstage blamed Dominic Mysterio for last week being the most embarrassing Monday in Judgment Day history. Dom pointed out Finn also lost to Rollins and again suggested a new member that Balor again denied. They got heated with Liv and Raquel interrupting and reminding they have a huge week ahead with chances to bring home gold to the faction. Morgan told Balor they were not involved with Cargill, and they each decided to handle their respective business on the night. I know some people are tired of Judgment Day. These backstage segments continue to hit for me. The characters and storylines are regularly developing again. It is certainly time to deliver on this like new member situation in the next week or two. Either that or stop mentioning it for a couple weeks and then bring it up again maybe the week before whatever is going to transpire happens. But this gets a good. Braun Breaker fought Dominic Mysterio in a non-title match. Braun dominated early. Carlito distracted, allowing Dom to rebound and even hit a 619. Breaker stopped him on the top rope for a Frankensteiner, but Balor and Carlito pulled him out of the ring for an attack and the disqualification that prevented a spear. Breaker overcame Dom, speared the life out of Carlito. Then he stared down Balor, who had a chair in his hands, to end the segment. This gets a bad. It's such a lazy and trite finish to the match. Why couldn't Braun have just beaten Dom? Like, we barely see the Intercontinental Champion on TV, and now he gets to wrestle for 4 minutes before a DQ. The crowd was audibly disappointed by the booking as well. They didn't even boo. They were just like let down. They were depressed. I don't even understand the point. What are they teasing? Breaker and Balor, a guy who we as fans have no reason to believe is capable of winning a non-title match these days, let alone beating a champion. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to bubble up like Breaker, Balor, Styles. AJ Styles is a triple threat. Maybe that splinters off into Styles and Balor at WrestleMania, and we get like a solid TV program into a long anticipated singles rematch. Then you can have, Breaker go up against Penta and Ludwig Kaiser, maybe Dominic Mysterio, and you do a multi-man intercontinental title match. But on Monday night, despite a few flashes here, this was really disappointing as far as I was concerned. The women's tag team titles were on the line. Glow Est against Liv and Raquel. This main evented. The faces got a somewhat generic tape promo, but they came across well, showing a lot of passion. The champions attacked before the bell. Naomi, after the break, hit a really nice scissor kick, pendulum X Factor over the ropes, and a flying blockbuster. Belair added a 450 on Rodriguez for a false finish. Raquel raked her eyes to stop Kiss of Death, tagging Liv for an assisted flying codebreaker false finish. They should name that move. Michael Cole did call it Wicked Codebreaker, and if that's the name, that's fine, but I don't think it was. Bianca stopped Oblivion Cold with Naomi knocking Liv out with a kick. As they tried the double team KOD, Dom ran in, distracted, Raquel saved. She hit Naomi with a Hana Bomb, allowing Liv to come back with Oblivion for a great broken fall. If you were watching this match, you thought that was the end. Bianca speared the life out of Raquel coming back, one of her best spears ever. The crowd went ballistic. Loudest reaction of the night. Naomi hit a swinging jawbreaker on Liv, with Bianca adding KOD for another broken fall. Naomi took out Raquel with Heatseeker, and they landed the double KOD on Liv, who got a rope break with Dom's help. Rodriguez escaped a ringside KOD by dropping Belair into the announce table. Naomi splashed her. Liv tried to catch Naomi coming back inside with Oblivion, but she stopped it. Then she kicked out of a victory roll that seemed like the finish. She hit rear view and booted Dom in the head. Raquel stopped the split-legged moonsault coming back by Naomi. She took her head, banged it into the top of the ring post. She fell down, collapsed off the ropes, and Liv covered for the 1-2-3 to crown new champions in a 13-minute match that felt even longer than its runtime in the best possible way. This was excellent. Excellent match, excellent pace, excellent booking. The shit just ruled, man. Some of those false finishes were beautifully executed, and they created this seesaw viewing experience where you kept saying, okay, this is the end, only for it to keep getting pushed out. I could have sworn the victory roll was it, just as in one example. The result creates some legitimate concern on my part heading into Chamber. We'll discuss that in the Ultimate Preview. But in a silo, these ladies had not just the match of the night, they had the segment of the entire week on the WWE main roster. There was nothing better than this across 5.5 hours of television. And that's both great because the women got to shine, but simultaneously problematic because this week did have The Rock and 2 Cody segments, and it was the go home for Chamber. This match, and you know what? Really the last couple of weeks has been a reminder that Liv and Raquel are an excellent tag team. Very much Shawn Michaels and Diesel. She is nicknamed Big Mommy Cool after all. They have a tag moveset. The size differential is always a plus on teams, and they're just immensely fluid together. Interestingly, they really didn't do many of the moves where Raquel uses Liv as a weapon in this match, but that also made it stand out from a lot of the other times we see them fight. For all her flaws as a singles competitor, man, Rodriguez is legitimately a phenomenal tag team wrestler. It's her niche, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The substantial interference with Dom had me on a slight borderline here, but I'm at 4.25 stars and an A. I almost went up another quarter star, just a little bit too much interference. But this, again, exceeded everything from WWE this week, and it was by a significant margin. In fact, I already rewatched it Tuesday morning before doing this show. The way this subverted expectations and took us on a ride was tremendous. It was one of the best WWE TV matches of the entire year so far. If I had to guess, I'd say it's top 2 or 3 matches on the main roster so far in 2025. And I also don't want to overlook how great of a job that Dom did as a heel during this entire episode. He sold his ass off against Breaker. He had a perfectly timed run-in during the finishing sequence of this match. He took a huge boot from, I believe I just said Naomi, factoring into the finish. This guy has completely come into his own, and he is one of Triple H's biggest individual success stories since he took over creative. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven confronted Aldis, ready to take the places of Belair and Naomi in the chamber. This is coming off of that attack from SmackDown. They just assumed that they were injured. Chelsea said it was ridiculous not to have the greatest Canadian on a Canadian PLE. Aldis told her to pack her gear because she will wrestle in Toronto on SmackDown the night before Chamber. No grade here, but it was a fun setup from Chelsea, and I actually kind of liked what Aldis did. Intercontinental title was on the line. Lyra Valkyria defending against Dakota Kai. Lyra got some woos, but nothing too loud during her entrance. A delayed vertical style suplex got the crowd going. They had a nice extended counter sequence that again got the fans hot. Kai hit her running boot and chiropractor, which was actually called by Michael Cole.
Thank you.
A tad late on it, but Michael Cole called the chiropractor. Our long national nightmare is over. Lyra then somewhat quickly grabbed her off the ropes for Nightwing to retain the title. It was an immensely sudden and surprising finish. There was also a show of respect after the bell. I just didn't feel like the match had reached a true crescendo. Maybe they had to rush for timing, one reason or another. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have loved for them to get 3-4 more minutes here because this was on its way to being a really impressive little match. And I did appreciate some of the callbacks to their initial meeting. Ivy Nile ran down Dakota, threw her into the barricade, then completely bludgeoned Lyra after the bell. She looked real strong. She got nice heat before standing tall with the title at the end of that entire segment. Ivy later said she would beat the hell out of Lyra weekly until she gets her title shot. The Creed brothers who were with her got attacked by the Viking Raiders. They brawled and it ended the segment. Nice attack for Ivy, a solid transition back into the title match that she was supposed to get already if not for Dakota's concussion. And they might even do a triple threat given the way she ran down Dakota Kai. This was good, start to finish. Lyra definitely thought she broke her nose or something. It's going to be curious to see if that was the case. I actually think across the 5.5 hours of WWE TV, this was my second favorite segment of the entire week, and it still could have been better, like I just explained. But Lyra showed off some serious power. She fully got the crowd behind her. Dakota flashed yet again, and she has been pointing up. The arrow has been pointing up for her since returning. Unlike SmackDown, which had the women's mid-card somewhat dead in the water already, this created hope that Raw can actually build this division. As I said, I want Bayley going after the title post-Chamber because she got the clean one-on-one win. Same thing for Naomi over Chelsea Green on SmackDown. I did have a grade on this, 3.5 stars B. Again, we were so close to getting that 3.75 in the plus, but it just needed a little bit more time and a little bit more crowd energy. Speaking of Bayley, here's a segment with Roxanne Perez that did not air on Raw in the United States. And again, I don't even see it on their social media, but apparently it aired internationally.
That win would mean everything. Getting to WrestleMania in
blah,
any capacity
blah,
is...
blah, blah. Bailey, you really need to stop living in the past because this is my era now. Did you not see my big win over Raquel Rodriguez last week? No? Well, I'm pretty sure you saw my record-breaking performance at the Royal Rumble where, I don't know if you have space in that big fat head of yours to remember, but I broke your record. So after Elimination Chamber, I'm punching my ticket to WrestleMania because nobody is on the level of the Prodigy.
Roxanne, how could I forget about the Royal Rumble? I mean, you won't stop talking about it. But I'm not living in the past. I'm living through experience because I don't know if you remember in that big old head of yours that I've been in Elimination Chamber matches before and I've won. Just like I've won a Royal Rumble, just like I've won at WrestleMania. And look, to be honest, after everything we've been through in these past few weeks, I can see you at WrestleMania one day. But it just ain't this year.
Quality segment, character development, storyline development, not on television, not posted to the official WWE social media account. I cannot make sense of the way they're doing this. It's one thing to give the international audience some extra stuff. That's completely fine. But post it all over your social media. It should be on Twitter immediately when it airs. That way your US audience can see what the international audience sees. So just super frustrating. We had Penta, Ludwig Kaiser, and Pete Dunne. If you remember last week, I had a minor criticism about Penta needing to be more patient on his entrance. He perfected it. He stayed centered this week. They also changed the pyro a little bit. I don't think it was a spinning pyro anymore. It was just a big burst of it behind him. I thought it looked better, to be honest with you. Penta hit a Tower of Doom and did a pump fake before consecutive tope con heroes. Dunne caught Penta with bitter end for a broken fall after Kaiser grabbed the tassels on his mask. Penta jumped off Kaiser's back for a Mexican Destroyer on Dunne, adding sacrifice, but Kaiser interrupted Penta Driver, shoving him outside. He gave Dunne a spike version of his finisher and got the win. This was a nice way to get Penta his first loss, of course, protecting him without him actually taking the fall. The match was really good. Simultaneously, it moved slower than I expected. Kaiser winning was definitely the right move, given they need to rematch before moving on to this mid-card story and really whatever the hell else they're going to be doing for WrestleMania. And there was something that WWE actually did post. This was a end-of-night promo with Kaiser, which I just found particularly entertaining, so I'll go ahead and play it for you.
I'm here with Ludwig Kaiser. Kaiser, congratulations on winning and handing Penta his first loss here on Monday Night Raw in that triple threat match, essentially stealing the victory.
Stealing? What are you talking about stealing, Kathy? Who was stolen from? I mean, I feel like somebody stole something from me. I feel like Penta has been stealing attention from Ludwig Kaiser since the day he walked into this company. Isn't that right? And you're standing here talking to me like I was stealing anything? No, I wasn't stealing anything. What I've been doing is working hard, being humble, going out there, hitting every ball they're throwing at me out the park. That's what I've been doing. I have not been stealing anything. Penta, though, Penta has been stealing. And you know what happened? I punished him. I punished him for that. I took away what means the most to him, and that is the attention, that is the hype that he's been enjoying over the last few weeks. But no more, Penta. No más, pendejo. Escúchame. 2025 is going to be the year of Ludwig Kaiser.
Dropping pendejo like that? I mean, man, that is absolutely fantastic. Kaiser's got it all. LWO fought New Day. The refreshed entrance music now started with a distorted "It's Your Boys, the New Day," which was odd, but also kind of fitting. New Day did the whole "you should thank God we're here" bit and got minimal reaction before the bell. LWO got the crowd cheering and responding to all of their individual moves. But the crowd never actually got hot. Not a single person ever stood up. A distraction allowed Kofi Kingston to rake the eyes, and New Day ultimately hit up, up, down, down for the win. Limited reaction to the finish as well. Dragon Lee's save actually brought the most energy out of anything, but New Day overcame him for a really sloppy double powerbomb to end it. We discussed this last week. WWE had a red-hot pair of heels in New Day, and they just completely squandered them by not capitalizing immediately. 2 months of doing absolutely nothing has killed the fan interest, which is just terrible and immensely unfortunate. It's to the point where you almost need them to come out and redo the turn and shit on Big E again just to get fans booing them. This segment was actually good because everything went as it should. New Day cheated to win. LWO got most of the offense. The fans got impressed by them. The Cincinnati crowd, like I said, was shit on Monday. They would have been hotter for this, though, if it was booked properly over the last couple of months. Instead, it was a completely forgettable part of the show. And don't forget, New Day coverage was main eventing this podcast for a couple weeks. Now look how late we're actually discussing it in the show. Roger Babin, 8175, sent us a question on YouTube. Said, regarding the New Day discussion, my main problem with the follow-through, beyond what you guys have discussed, is the actual scripting of the promos. What made this heel turn feel so iconic was the months of build where the infighting between them felt like a real conversation. This didn't come off as a wrestling angle. The week or two following the turn was also good. You have this really good promo setup with Jey Uso, only to have them do typical heel shit laughing in his face. He's referring to the part that did not air on television last week, but we played for you on the podcast. He said it's closer to A-Town down levels of heat, not what made New Day's heel turn compelling. That's an insightful point, Roger. It went from deep and realistic to surface level and formulaic. And that's beyond the issues we already talked about last week. You're spot on here. What it also speaks to is one of the big flaws in Paul Levesque's creative, and that's the way he books heels. He just refuses to let them get wins and establish themselves. This is a situation where New Day, they should have been going out and devastating teams with their veteran acumen and their refound focus and aggression. They should be 5-0, 6-0 at this point, beating established teams and also pairs of faces who just get angry at them backstage and want to fight them. They should be on their way to take the titles. They should perhaps already be tag team champions. Instead, they're an afterthought on the show, a team you know is good and can be compelling, but you're not getting the chance to see it on your television. And when they do show up, you don't care because they waited so long to capitalize on it. That's the problem of New Day right now. Carmelo Hayes got into it again with R-Truth. Backstage, there was more confusion over the term him. He informed that The Miz made a tag team match for them. Miz was all hyped about it. I guess he was still looking for an ally. Melo was obviously not about it, nor should he be. If Miz was looking for a backup, he could have just teamed with Truth, given they've done that for years and literally won the tag team titles together like 10 months ago, because now Miz is, I guess, a tweener, so they can't team. I could not make any sense of this. Anyway, the gimmick here was that Truth had a surprise partner from Louisiana, and before the match, he announced his partner, Louisiana Knight, which did get a nice pop, and I will admit, I chuckled a little bit. Truth is just fantastic. So we had L.A. Truth against Melo Don't Miz. Speaking to what I just said, Truth tried joining Miz in his corner during the match. Knight got the hot tag, which was solid, but he botched something with Miz. Truth hit 5 moves of doom and an STF. Shinsuke Nakamura attacked Knight from behind while ringside as Miz and Hayes combined for a first 48 skull-crushing finale, and they got the win. Melo seemed to be intrigued by the pairing because they got a dub. He celebrated in front of Miz. This one is crazy tough. There was technically nothing wrong with it. And I really see both sides of it on a grading scale. The positives: another win for Melo. Nakamura actually got a strong reaction against Knight attacking him. The finisher was actually kind of fire. And a short-term team of Melo and Miz could elevate Melo, especially if he beats him in a singles match. The negatives: super random tag team match that was not wrestled well. Melo probably should have been the one to pin Truth, even if it ultimately doesn't matter that much. The idea of Melo and Miz teaming, I don't know. Like, I think they'll play great character-wise, but Melo was also in the middle of winning a bunch of singles matches, so now he's in the tag team division. If this lasts more than a few weeks, I'll be disappointed. If it's just a couple weeks to kind of get us through and past Chamber to develop a storyline, then maybe I can buy it. But something about this just feels wrong. It feels like it's corny when Melo really shouldn't be involved in something corny. I'm completely borderline on it. SmackDown was so bad that it was probably one of the highlights. So I'm going to call this a light provisional good. But it totally depends on what they do with this next week and going forward. WWE Tag Team Championships were on the line. DIY defending against Pretty Deadly. The challengers actually got up on the champions. Before the bell, they roused the crowd. The match itself was just starting to get going when the Street Profits ran out of the crowd, destroying all 4 guys. They did a pounce back suplex to Johnny Gargano and Montez Ford's frog splash to Tommaso Ciampa. Motor City Machine Guns then ran in. They got murked themselves. The Profits hit the Spinebuster neckbreaker to end it. Their original theme music did play after it was over. Fans stood They seemed to be on the Prophet's side, but the reaction to all of this was so limited. This might have worked for me if it did not immediately succeed the Rock segment, which was preceded by an almost identical booking with Naomi and Liv. Instead of standing out, it was immensely repetitive. Plus, we saw them do the exact same thing at the Royal Rumble. A better crowd might have been super hot for it. This just contributed nothing. And I'm into the direction the Profits are going, but this didn't necessarily show me anything we haven't seen before. So I'm going to go with a bad on this one, but my hopes are high for the Profits. Zelina Vega got a pretty damn awesome promo package with an anime background, talking about being underestimated her entire career, but exceeding expectations, and now being ready to take advantage of a fresh opportunity and prove herself. It was probably the most character development that Zelina's had, I don't want to say in her entire career, but possibly. Hell, it was more character development in this than MCMG has received since debuting in WWE. I really liked this. One of my 2 or 3 favorite things on SmackDown. This was good. And that wraps up the good, the bad, and the ugly. As I said, largely a positive week on Raw. Couple small bright spots on SmackDown, but the blue brand was immensely disappointing on Friday. You heard me mention it early in the show, and now you know exactly why I felt that way. Welcoming back in vintage Chris Vanini for our WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. At this juncture, we are dealing with a 4-match card. We're going to break down each of the matches, the go-home moments from SmackDown, and Raw will give you our predictions, our expectations coming out of Elimination Chamber, and at the end, we will give you a pre-show expectation grade. Just a reminder off the top, we will have a WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis podcast Saturday night as soon as this show goes off the air. So let's start with Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus against Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. Tiffy on SmackDown wore Burberry gear that looked fantastic. She said everyone's been jealous of her since she won the title, and she'd make sure the Unstoppable Force comes to a definitive end at Chamber. Then she talked about Charlotte Flair challenging while looking down at her. She said Charlotte's a dream match, and at Mania, she'd come for her spot as the top girl in WWE. Certainly should have said woman. Nia and Candice interrupted, talking shit, with Jax saying she'd fight for the title again after they win Chamber. This did absolutely nothing for me. The crowd barely reacted to Stratton. Again, the fans were awful all night in New Orleans. This was an example somewhat of that because she's popular enough where they should have cheered for her no matter what. Tiffy was out there all glib at what happened last week. She should have been furious that Charlotte disrespected her. Stratton showed no gumption. Granted, there's 2 months until Mania, but I wanted to hear from her, hey, Charlotte, you used to be able to bully girls in this division. Shit changed while you were gone. You're messing with the wrong one. Something like that. This was another situation where they could have elevated Tiffy as a face, yet they started the promo with her saying people are jealous of her. That's mean girl shit. She's supposed to be a baby face now. This was such a waste of time. Tiffy's promo badly needs work if she's going to legitimately be a top women's champion in this company. And just the way this entire segment was put together was an utter failure.
It was terrible. I'm getting a little bit concerned about Tiffany's ability to kind of get to the top here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's her or if it's the promos that are being written for her. Because like you said, she's acting like mean girl, like heelish at the beginning of the promo. She says, ever since I won this title, everybody's been obsessed with me. Like, yeah, you're the champion. What are you talking about? That's how this works. And then again, like you said, coming for Charlotte's number one spot as the number one girl in WWE. Use of girl was weird, but also you are the champion. You are the number one spot. Talk about that.
Right. I am the number one spot, Charlotte. You're coming after me.
Yeah. Like this was not good. And we got time. I'm getting a little bit concerned here. Like there's been a lot of crap towards Charlotte's booking and everything. What they're doing with Tiffany has not been good either.
Stratton's promo has always been her weakest point, and at the end of her NXT run, it seemed like she was starting to figure it out. Then she went to the main roster, and she had hits and misses, but she was good enough where people were getting behind her. Now that she's being asked to carry the title and be the main promo, you can see there are massive flaws. And by the way, she's not the first, and she will not be the last. And I understand what you're saying, concerned. For me, they're short-term concerns. Liv Morgan, when she came up to the main roster, could not speak. Now she is an excellent promo, carry an entire segment on the mic. Rhea Ripley, she's having some promo struggles now, but when she came up, she was awful. I mean, truly, truly terrible. She got way better in Judgment Day, and now she's struggling again because of the way they're having her cut promos. So I'm not saying Stratton's dead in the water. I know you're not saying that either, and your concerns are 100% legitimate, but it does feel like this initial title run, and I said this, I always talk about they push people too soon. I don't believe Braun Breaker needed the Intercontinental Championship right away. I really don't believe Tiffany Stratton needed to already be women's champion. Like, I know they want to push new young female talent to the forefront, but you don't always have to do it this way. She could have been United States champion and went on a dominant run and established that title. They knew that was coming. So for me, it may be one of those situations where the first title reign doesn't work, you flush it and you move on. But the big problem here is that Stratton is floundering and Flair has done absolutely nothing of quality since returning. And that kind of transpired a little bit further during the match that Stratton had on SmackDown. Can I get to that, or did you want to follow up?
Go ahead.
So we had Stratton against LeRae. Flair, who got a nothing promo package minutes earlier in the show. I mean, literally said nothing. It was made even less significant because she showed up live anyway, but she entered a minute after the bell and joined commentary. Stratton pulled the Flair by completely missing her top rope moonsault outside, but she sold it as if she landed it, which is a huge faux pas. Then Charlotte's on commentary, and this woman said absolutely nothing. 0.0. Not a word of any value. Tiffy missed a swanton, countered into a crucifix cover and a senton in a really nice Canada sequence. Stratton then tried Alabama Slam. She tried to do it to LeRae vertically, which does not work because you need to hit a surface. And then she hit prettiest moonsault ever and got the win. Jax attacked immediately. Stratus ran down stopping Annihilator, only for Jax to overcome it and stack both faces for Annihilator, which was the only interesting part of the segment, but the move barely had any impact or got any reaction. Again, Flair didn't say peep on commentary as this was happening. She did stand over Stratton and point to the WrestleMania sign after the bell. Before we talk about the part that matters here, I want to address the Annihilator really fast. I saw Nia getting roasted for the move looking shitty. And don't get it twisted, it was awful. But let's not forget, everyone sat around, us included, and we shit on this woman for being unsafe and dangerous for 5 years. So she gets fired. She comes back. She's clearly much improved. She's way safer in the ring. Now she's working with a 50-year-old woman and doing a spot where two human bodies are stacked atop one another. Yeah, it looked terrible. And I said as much. But I'm not about to criticize this woman for being safe. And I feel like if you do, you're being immensely hypocritical. Better safe than sorry.
I mean, sure. I mean, she's also given the move a million times much better than that.
Not the two women stacked on top of each other, one 50 years old like that.
I guess, but it's like if she can't get Annihilator, she shouldn't be wrestling. I mean, she's not like 70 out there. It ain't made.
No, I know, but still, I mean, she's trying to be careful with a legend ahead of a single match that she's in. Like, it looked terrible, and it deserves criticism for looking terrible. But like,
that's all.
I'm not gonna kill her like I did when she tried to murder Kairi Sane and didn't give a shit about it. You know?
Yeah. No. All I wrote down was not a good Annihilator. That's it.
Right. That's it. Like, it's a note and then move on. I saw people crushing her. They should fire her over this. I'm like, man, it's the opposite of that. Like, better safe than sorry.
If
maybe she was too
said
safe.
They should fire her over that. You're
I mean, dude, there's a lot of shit going around. I just wanted to put that out there. But look, the weak ass shit promo from Stratton was followed by Zip Zero Stingy with De Niro from Flair. Not a word about her challenge, despite her setting up the storyline 2 weeks ago. Zero character. Not a word she said was even the least bit interesting. And that was during a match with multiple botches and a post-match attack that had Stratus involved, yet it failed to even rouse the crowd, despite Trish being out there. This was a huge womp womp. It did nothing to enhance the PLE match or the Mania feud. And ultimately, this match on this card, it just feels completely jammed in. Like, it's Trish, it's Toronto. There is value to it. But they set it up over 1 week, really 2 weeks, I'm sorry. They set it up over 2 weeks. And they cost Tiffy a title match against Nia at a PLE in order to do it. It just feels like a big mess altogether.
If Charlotte's going to be there, be a heel and do something and beat her up and yada, yada. This is 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in a row. She's just Tiffany's been beaten up and she just stands over at her and doesn't take advantage of it. You're supposed to be the heel. Does nobody in this Tiffany Charlotte feud know who is the heel and the face here? Like, what are we doing? It doesn't make any sense. Now, if you want to say, look, Tiffany has a Elimination Chamber match, we don't want to go too heavy on Charlotte because that's another pay-per-view away, then just don't have Charlotte on the show. She didn't need to be there on this show. If this is your go home for Toronto next week, just keep Charlotte off the show.
Dude, she didn't even need to challenge for the title yet. They could have waited until after Chamber and had Charlotte choose, and then the Chamber person gets the other one. They could have done a really unique thing where they even argued over it. There's so many different ways they could have done this. Charlotte has been a non-factor. Again, she set up her storyline. Even though it was an immensely confusing promo and the stuff that she did on TV was terrible when she first came back, she set it up saying, this is not about me so much challenging which champion whose title I want to take. This is about me finding out which of you deserves to be challenged by me, which actually makes a lot of sense for her character. And then she chose Tiffy, but didn't say why. She didn't say, you impressed me. You deserve to be challenged by me. They just dropped that entire part of it. Now she just looks down on her because she's younger, I guess. It's just like, it's so weak.
There's just so much in WWE right now where they're just not doing the basics.
This for me is the worst. Even I know the Rock thing pissed us off and it angered a lot of people. This for me is the worst thing happening in the company. Stratton.
It's like they're overthinking and forgetting the basic
story
point
beats.
of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So prediction for this match. I have Stratton and Stratus winning. I mean, you have Lorraine in this match. She has to be the one to take the fall. I don't think anything else would make sense.
Yes, it's going to be Stratton faction who wins. Whatever we want to call these two. Trishy.
Let's Trishy time. I think we could probably do.
There we go.
Yeah. Let's move to Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens in an unsanctioned match. Owens on social media before SmackDown cut a promo asking Zayn about his family, while then turning the camera into a window that showed Sami and his wife playing with their daughter. KO was angry that Sami was going to put him in the hospital and consequently hurt his family, saying he would never forgive his friend for that. Sami then revealed in an interview on Raw that after seeing what Kevin did, he went over to Owens' house, but no one was home except his mom. So I'm thinking, oh my God, some dastardly shit's about to happen. But then he's like, I just made sure she was doing well, and then I left. It was like the most Canadian thing. Hey, Miss Owens, are you doing well? Everything, you're healthy? Okay, great. Nice to see you. And then Sami said he's embarrassed that he went over there in the first place, not knowing what he would have done if Kevin was home, but it would not have been good. He promised KO that whatever happens on Saturday, no matter how much fans want it, it will be a bad time. For me, there needs to be a big blow up, pull apart, or something on SmackDown this Friday, because with these two guys, the story is there. The animosity is there. The history is there. I'm not feeling the red hot fire like I should be going directly into an unsanctioned match. It just needs a little bit more gasoline. I do believe they will give that to us on Friday. SmackDown is in Toronto. You hype up the crowd for the other show in Toronto the next night. But Owens' part of this was obviously much better by comparison. There was a reality to it, as opposed to Zayn just telling us a story during his interview. So all of this continues to hit for me. It's probably the best told story across WWE TV over the last month. I'm completely here for the match, and I just want that little bit of gasoline this coming Friday.
And also, like, there's a nice little, like, understanding there where, like, normally in wrestling, if somebody goes to somebody's house and is filming something, you're just like, oh man, and the other person's going to freak out.
Right.
Except these guys are best friends. Kevin Owens has been to Sami's place a million times, I'm sure. So Sami Zayn's reaction is not, how dare you come to my house? Because he comes to his house all the time. And so his reaction is to just kind of do the same. So it made total sense. And I was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But this also goes back to what we said last week, which was like, they just like jumped to unsanctioned match without really building toward it. And then we're there. And so it's not as red hot as it could be. Frankly, I don't think this needs to be unsanctioned at this point, but it is what it is. It was a good, solid build. It is the best story that they have going on. It's not super crazy hot, but again, they only kind of really built it over like 2 weeks. So
yeah, I guess the argument is that the history is so deep and the story is so, complex and long term that they did a package pile driver, and Sammy's so pissed that it, he went to end his career like that. He took the step that he's never taken before, right? He's given him the pop-up power bomb on the ring apron and tried to steal his title, and he's done a lot of other nefarious shit over the years. But he actually tried to end his career, and he's not cleared. So what else could they do? It would have to be an unsanctioned match. The only thing that remains odd to me is if you're going to do KO and Sammy unsanctioned, and I know it's in Canada, and I said this last week, it's Toronto, not Montreal, and it's Elimination Chamber, not WrestleMania. It just feels like if you were going to do this match, and it was going to be the match between them, that you would want one of those two conditions checked, Montreal or WrestleMania. I know they fought at WrestleMania before. I know Elimination Chamber is in a huge stadium dome, and they've sold more than 30,000 tickets for it, whatever the number is.
By the way, I didn't even realize that until today.
Oh, yeah.
It's at Sky Dome. The whole time I thought it was at whatever the old Air Canada Center. I didn't realize it is a stadium show, which is kind of crazy. In which case you go, look, tons of people from Montreal are coming to the show. There's plenty of room.
Are they? I mean, again, it's a far-ass drive. It's not like it's around the corner from each other.
I've made that drive. It's not too bad.
You've done Montreal to Toronto?
Yeah, I did. Montreal was my bachelor party.
Why'd you go to Toronto then?
Because it's we stopped in Toronto. We did Toronto and Montreal. We hit them both, and I've been to Toronto.
It's interesting. It's so interesting you said that. I know this is random. We're getting off on a tangent here, but I was almost in upstate New York, like Buffalo, last year. And I was saying to myself, hey, if I make this trip, it would make, I've never been to Canada. It would make zero sense for me to be all the way up here and not go to Canada. And then I started looking at like distance between Montreal, Quebec, and Toronto. And I realized how close Montreal and Toronto were. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go to Buffalo and I'm going to go to Montreal, then I should definitely go to Toronto. And all of a sudden, like a 5-day trip turned into like 3 weeks. Because I was like, I can't spend 2 days in Montreal. I got to see it, right? So then I started planning it out. And I had a pretty decent trip like lined up for myself. And then got into conversations about like the logistics of all of it and then work. And I was just like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for me to go. And I canceled the entire thing. But I almost did Buffalo, Montreal, and Toronto. And I was curious. I was wondering to myself, like, how feasible is it to actually make that drive? So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's about a 5.5 hour drive, which is
easy for me. Yeah.
Like Dallas to Houston, really. And I've done that before. So it's a little thing too. I love how Canadians in their Canadian accents, which I love. Toronto is Toronto, and Montreal is Montreal. Like they emphasize the syllables a little bit differently. It's Montreal.
Well, it's French Canadian.
Not Montreal, like we say. It's Montreal. They emphasize at the end of the word. Like in Toronto, it's just Toronto. Like it's all, there's no T's or anything in it. So, but
I presume it's the French Canadian pronunciation, which like makes sense, obviously.
No, they all kind of say it like that, I think. But still, the stadium show in Canada, they haven't done it since WrestleMania 18. You're doing Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens here. I just frankly, again, I don't think this needs to be unsanctioned. You could do any kind of stipulation. I personally hate the idea of an unsanctioned match. Like, it's on the card. You have a referee. Like, there's only 4 matches on this card.
Yeah, that's as old as wrestling, though. I mean,
we're not pretending it's not happening. I think unsanctioned is way, even though it's not done very much, I think it's overdone. Like, it should be like last resort type of stuff.
I really don't believe it's overdone in WWE. I really don't.
Well, I think about I was thinking about Gargano Ciampa at NXT WrestleMania 34, which you and I went to. That was one.
That was 7 years ago, dude.
This is the one that comes to mind.
7 years ago.
It's overdone in wrestling, and this doesn't feel like it's there yet.
It felt like there wasn't enough.
Like, you could
violence
say no DQ. Like, unsanctioned added nothing to this match, as opposed to just saying no DQ. But the only reason you do the unsanctioned is because you have to sell the package pile driver,
right?
Even though Sami Zayn was like walking around fine after 2 weeks, and I know it's different from being cleared.
Yeah,
it was like.
I mean, he said it in the interview on Monday, though. He was like, hey, I'm not cleared yet, and like I'm not gonna be, and it's my next F, and that's why we're doing this. I mean, I feel you. I think usually when you get to unsanctioned, there's so much direct violence in the lead up to it that you're like, okay, the way to pay this off is unsanctioned. very similar to Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. There was so much violence and consistent hatred in the lead up where you're like, bad blood, Hell in a Cell makes all the sense in the world. Here, they're leaning on the history and also the impact specifically of the package pile driver to tell you that this needs to be unsanctioned. So you have to be someone who's watched and who cares about them. And ideally, when you're building a show for the masses, that's not exactly what you want. You want to lean into some of that, but you also want to give them the immediacy of it. That's why I want the gasoline. That's why I believe we're going to get that Friday on the go home. I think it's going to blow up between the two of them. Yeah. We're going to see some shit happen. And then we're going to feel going into Elimination Chamber, like this deserves to be unsanctioned. So that's my fingers crossed hope. And I believe they will do that. I just want to say that. In terms of a prediction for this match, it can legitimately go either way. But dude, if Owens loses this, then what is he ever going to win? Like, Sammy came out of WrestleMania last year as the Intercontinental Champion. We hated it. He's ever since he lost that title, he's had some wins here and there. Obviously, he won War Games and some other stuff. But he lost to Drew McIntyre a bunch of times. He hasn't really been successful over on Raw. But KO has been in this like quasi main event role on SmackDown, but he's just lost everything, including multiple times to Cody. And I just don't see a scenario. I know Sammy is beloved. I get it. I know they want the big pop in Canada, but I can't see the forest through the trees here, right? Like, let's make believe the bookings for WrestleMania, let's just suppose, are Owens and Randy Orton and Sammy and Cross. Who needs the win going into those matches? Owens needs the win. And then Sammy can get his win over Cross, whether that happens on Mania or not. So again, I don't know that those are the matches. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go. But I just don't see a finish or booking of this match that makes sense for Owens, short-term or long-term, that is other than him winning. So I have KO beating Sammy in this unsanctioned match.
It's got to be Kevin Owens. Also because Sami Zayn is not cleared to wrestle. So if Kevin Owens loses to a guy who's injured, that just hurts even more. And like you said, Sami Zayn has gotten some of his big moments. Kevin Owens hasn't really gotten that.
No.
Not in a very long time. He loses every title match he has.
Mm-hmm.
The only real big moment he's had over the last many years that he came out on the winning side of was the tag team match with Sami.
With Sami Zayn, yeah.
Yeah, so like it's got to be Kevin Owens here for a million reasons. I at first I was thinking, yeah, this could go either way. But as you kind of spelled it out, I realized like, no, this has to be Kevin Owens. Yeah. And frankly, if it's not, like, I'm going to be pretty upset.
Absolutely.
Sami Zayn will lose nothing for losing this match.
Nothing.
Sami Zayn, win or lose, Sami Zayn stays at the same spot.
Correct.
And that's sort of the case for Kevin Owens as well. But Kevin Owens has so many losses that have piled up in big matches over the last couple of years that, like, he even had a storyline where he said he doesn't deserve to have a title shot.
Right, exactly.
Not to say that he's getting a title shot coming out of this, but the guy's got to get some wins. And this is an easy one to do against, to get a bunch of heel heat by beating up your best friend who's not even cleared to wrestle. Like, to me, it's clear as day.
No matter what Owens' booking is for WrestleMania, he has to win. If it's going to be this match as a rematch with another stipulation or whatever the case might be, Owens has to win because Sammy needs to get revenge. If it's Owens and Orton, then Owens needs to do something so dastardly to Sammy that Orton comes back, tries to take him out, and comes in as the hero babyface because Owens won that match.
They don't have to. I was told that things don't have to culminate in a match, so you never know.
Oh, again, that's unrelated to this, right? It is.
I'm just saying, yes, Kevin Owens
are active
will
wrestlers.
Get his comeuppance at some point, but he has to go.
Well, he already. That's the problem. He already had his comeuppance because Cody beat his ass twice.
Yeah.
one of which killing him through the Alabama Slam through the ladder and going up and getting the title. He didn't pin him, which is smart to keep him a little bit stronger and develop this. But nevertheless, I mean, Owens has to win, and this feels like one of those matches, dude. You know what? It's very similar, perhaps in some ways, to Finn Balor and Edge at WrestleMania, where we said The only booking here that actually makes sense long term is Balor beating Edge in this match, because he's the one who needs to get boosted from this. And then Edge won anyway. I don't think that'll happen with Sami in this case.
Agree.
Moving to the Women's Elimination Chamber match, our competitors Liv Morgan, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Bayley, Alexa Bliss, and Roxanne Perez. First, a little bit of lead-in. Bliss got a promo package on SmackDown saying a lot has changed while she was away, but the desperation and insecurity of WWE superstars remain the same. She said she'd turn the chamber into a playground, reminding that she won the match before. This was probably the first true usage of the moniker Twisted Bliss that I can remember. It really set her character apart from others, reminded us of her resume, got me interested in seeing what she'll do. I thought this was immensely successful.
Yes, it was good to finally hear from Alexa Bliss after 3 weeks, 4 weeks of not, when that's all that people wanted. I still wish this was in front of the crowd. I guess we're just not doing this.
Well, I think one of the reasons it wasn't in front of the crowd is they wanted all the graphics and all the cool, production that they did along with it to show that she's twisted, that there's two sides to her.
Yeah, I know, but it's so weird to have a wrestler have come back after being gone for like 3 or 4 years and to just be like, I wrote down in my notes, like she's just another wrestler now. Like she's just back in the mix. Vignette talks about what she was doing, and she's just back in the swing of things.
They didn't capitalize. They didn't capitalize on the energy that her return brought.
And we've talked about that every week since the Rumble, and I don't want to keep hitting over it, but it's just very much like, okay, we're just going to kind of accept Alexa Bliss sitting here doing mid-card type of stuff for right now instead of it being the big thing it was. So
it's similar to the New Day situation. They failed to capitalize on New Day's heel turn, which was mega hot, and they failed to capitalize on Bliss's rousing return in the Royal Rumble. One of, if not the biggest pop of the entire night. And she just comes out and has a match and so on and so forth.
It's only February. I feel like, a lot can change, but I feel like we're going to have a lot of good nominees for the 0.0 award for this year's Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties.
But you'd say like not following up on the New Day heel turn would be a 0.0?
New Day is going to be up there right now.
It might be. It is early though. It's a little bit too early for that, but yeah,
it is.
But we'll see. I mean, it's literally February.
Like shockingly bad, honestly.
Shockingly bad follow-up. Yeah, it is. I totally agree. Now, circling back before I get to the whole match, circling back to what I was saying, coming off of the women's tag team title match, Bianca and Naomi are now freed up from those championships to potentially win this match. Simultaneously, with Liv holding a tag team title now, one would think that eliminates her from taking this match. That messes me up in a serious manner, Chris, because Liv was going to be my pick coming in, moving to Ripley, Morgan, Io Sky as a triple threat at WrestleMania. That was my expectation. So now everything's reset for me. Is there anything you wanted to say about that women's tag team title change? Didn't get to talk about it a little bit earlier before we get into this actual Elimination Chamber prediction.
It was really good. The best, if not the second best thing on all of WWE television all weekend. They did a good job promoting the match throughout the show, something they don't do very often anymore. And it kind of, you knew there was going to be a title change because of that. It's like they don't make you think about the women's tag team titles this much unless they're going to change them. And so obviously they do. And does it change my feelings on the chamber? I don't know, because to this point, I still don't know who to pick.
So let's go through it, right? When we do chamber matches, just like Money in the Bank, just like the Royal Rumble, it's always a process of elimination, trying to figure out who will ultimately come out as the winner. And right off the top, as much as I would love it, I cannot imagine that WWE main roster fans are ready for Roxanne Perez to come out of the chamber as the winner. I mean, it would be a massive elevation for her. She would put on an incredible match with Ripley at WrestleMania, but I don't believe you can put someone like her in a WrestleMania main event level type of match, being for the Women's World Championship, when she hasn't even had a main roster, or hasn't had more than one main roster match at this juncture. So I got to eliminate Perez off the top. Bayley had a title match at WrestleMania last year. I really feel like she's headed for something directly with Roxy. Plus, she doesn't need to be in that spot I'm eliminating Bailey. Naomi, she's super over with the fans, but given an apples to apples choice between Naomi and Bianca Belair, if one of them was going to, have a major title match at WrestleMania, sorry, Naomi, it's not going to be you. It's going to be Bianca. So that brings me down, Chris, to a final 3 of Liv, Bianca, and Bliss. I don't believe you put Bliss over on SmackDown and start teasing Wyatt Six stuff if you're then going to have her challenge for the Raw title at WrestleMania. It doesn't really fit as far as I'm concerned. So that gets me to Liv and Bianca. And with this whole Jade Cargill storyline, and they kind of beat us over the head with it a little bit on Raw, but in a good way. They had Morgan backstage repeating that they were not the ones to do it. And then they had them go ahead and win the titles in this match with Jade not showing up like many people thought she might. I just feel like Jade is earmarked for Bianca or Naomi at WrestleMania, and I cannot imagine that it would be Naomi. Like, Jade and Naomi is not really a WrestleMania match. Jade and Bianca absolutely is. So I'm going to go back to my original prediction, despite the fact that this woman just won the tag team titles alongside Raquel Rodriguez. I think Liv Morgan is going to come out of Elimination Chamber, get into a match with Rhea Ripley, maybe Io Sky in a triple threat. And I think the other night she will defend those women's tag team championships. Liv Morgan wins the women's Elimination Chamber.
And you think that's going to be a triple threat with Io Sky?
I believe the reason why they are doing Rhea and Io on the Raw after Chamber is because the winner of this match will in some way interfere, disrupt it, whatever the case might be. It either leads to a DQ or it leads to like Rhea beating Io and Sky has a total case of why she should be getting a title shot. And she winds up at Mania because of what happened in the prior Raw where Rhea accidentally cost her that opportunity in the first place. So for me, that all fits together. They're trying to tell a story, figure out a way for Io to get in without winning Chamber or Royal Rumble. That's why I believe it goes to a triple threat.
I think you're right, because I was trying to figure out, like, why is this not, like, how do we not have Rhea Io on this card? Why is this a 4-match card again? Like, come on, guys. Like, give the people going to these stadium shows more than 4 matches.
And they could add a 5th Friday on SmackDown. They could, but it is 4 as of right now, to your point.
Just as of right now, when most people have already bought their tickets, they think they're getting 4 matches.
It's a joke.
And that stuff.
Yeah.
It is. And in theory, Rhea Io should be on this card.
It's 4 matches. Sorry to interrupt you. It's 4 matches, okay? There's one singles match, which is a great singles match. Don't get it twisted. But no titles are on the line. This is a PLE in a stadium. I think this is the first time since like 2021, maybe even before that there's a PLE without a title on the line. I mean, it's wild to me.
It's a good point. Maybe they do add something late. But again, to not have, you know what they're going to add? You know what I just realized?
What?
They're going to add a Chelsea Green match on here, I bet.
No, she has a match this Friday on SmackDown that they said.
Oh, that's true. They did put that there. Because she's got to be in Canada. Again, how do you not have Chelsea Green?
They have so many titles.
Show?
They have so many titles in this company, and none of them are being defended on this show.
So, as for this match, I think you're right. I think it ends up being Liv, Io, Rhea, and you do that so you can get Io in the match without having gone through the chamber. And because Liv is having such a big couple of years, you kind of want to give her a pretty big WrestleMania spot without doing Rhea Liv for the billionth time. That's probably what's happening. But
it makes sense why they would do that match Raw on Netflix to get it kind of out of the way to go to this. I apologize.
Yes.
Continue.
But to be different, I'm going to say Bianca wins and Io loses fair and square on Monday. We do Rhea Bianca with the understanding that these two are going to be rivals for a very long time. And just because this is not the main event of night 1 at WrestleMania, or maybe it is, but probably not the main event of night 1 at WrestleMania, it's not a reason not to do it. And they've been holding off on it for so long that, like, you do kind of want to get it going so you can create a rivalry out of it. And then Jade comes back. It turns out it was Naomi who did it because Naomi was jealous of the friendship with Bianca, wanted to be in on the tag team, yada, yada. Like, that explains itself pretty well. I don't feel super confident in everything I laid out there, but I think it all makes complete sense and is extremely possible.
You make a really salient point when you say that Rhea and Bianca has to get going now. Like, Ripley is 28, Belair's 35. Now, women's wrestlers are in the ring way longer than they ever have been before, but 35 is still 35. Okay. And I say that as someone who's older than that. Okay. Trust me. So it is a shit or get off the pot scenario, but for their first match, and I also understand what you're saying. Let me clarify that you're saying, well, they're not going to main event. People are going to be angry at that. I would be angry about that. But if it's a third match, that's a rubber match that does main event WrestleMania, whether it's 42, whether it's 43, then that would still kind of tick that box where the mega match between Ripley and Belair main events of WrestleMania. And it does make more sense for that to be a definitive final match between them that's going to main event rather than the first time they ever meet. But all of that said, if you're going to do a Rhea and Bianca major show build, you don't do it in 7 weeks. Like, it should be a storyline that develops and rouses the crowd and gets them immensely hot for this all-time showdown, which is what it has been built up into being. And 7 weeks does feel like a good amount of time, but not having a storyline behind it, having it just be a situation where Belair won a contendership, that doesn't tick the other boxes that I needed to. So I think there's a lot to the point that you're making, but I still don't know if I would be okay if they pulled that trigger. I might feel better about it if it was Rhea, Bianca, and Io. Therefore, you're not actually getting the one-on-one.
That's the thing, though.
And
like,
therefore, it's not in the main event.
I thought about that. But if you're going to have Rhea and Bianca in a WrestleMania
just
match
do it
for the first time,
rip off
you
the
got to
Band-Aid.
do it with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do it halfway.
It's
for
fair.
The third person.
It's a totally fair take. And I think those are the two options coming into this match. Like, it has to be Liv or Bianca. I'm glad we're on different sides of it. I see both. If Belair wins, I'm going to say this right now, I am not going to like immediately tear it apart and say, I can't believe they're doing this on 7 weeks notice. I'm not. But the build, what they have scheduled for those 7 weeks, needs to absolutely crush it. And there better be another match, whether it's Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, or it's something else that is so big that this does not main event night one.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too, like, Roman Reigns is still around for a bit. Rock wants to fight him. You've got Cody. Seth Rollins ain't going anywhere. Punk might retire in a year or two, but like, you know, you're still gonna have a lot of main event guys for a long time, and finding room for everybody is ultimately going to be tough.
There shouldn't be a finding room though for Ripley and Belair. Like, that's
no, but like,
that's up there, dude.
Like, how long until, you know, Braun Breaker's WrestleMania main event guy? Like
yeah.
There's a couple years you might be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm just saying. Like, kind of like when they did the Shield one-on-one after they held it off forever and then eventually did it at, I want to say, like, Battleground, remember? Like,
yeah.
You never know. People get hurt. Rhea's been injury prone the last couple of years. Like, sometimes you got to just go do it.
Dude, they also did the Reigns and Cena match and just threw it on
No Mercy.
I was going to say Fastlane. Yeah, No Mercy, whatever show that was.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, well, it's weird, but they'll get back to it. They'll do it again.
They didn't until post-COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, we are all set with the women. Let's move over to the men's Elimination Chamber. John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, and Logan Paul. Logan opened Raw for real. Logan opened Raw. He did get some good local cheap heat at first, and then unfortunately he went to
Well, they're really bad guys now because they cut down the city's sports team. That's what you do when you're a bad guy.
He said he would defeat 3 doorknobs and John Cena in the chamber.
No, don't like that.
Punk interrupted. Paul said he was jealous of his success outside the ring while everything Punk does is a failure. Punk dismissed Logan as being a dime a dozen, no character, no substance. Paul basically called him old news, saying fans would soon be chanting his name. So the fans obviously chanted for CM Punk. He retorted that they are legends and history makers, guys like him and Cena and those guys, while Logan won't wrestle long enough to even be remembered. Punk promised to eliminate him as a receipt and make history. He said he didn't care if Cody has to sell his soul because Punk is Satan himself and Paul is a nobody. Logan then cheap shotted him with a slap and he slid out of the ring. I certainly have more of an appetite for Punk and Paul than I would Cena and Paul, given it's John's last go around at WrestleMania. But I truly do not want this guy involved with either of those names on the biggest show of the year. That said, the segment was surprisingly, I don't want to say great. It was strong. Punk has been working with this air of confidence of late. He's had some solid big-time confrontations. Him tearing down Logan the way he did obviously spoke on behalf of a large portion of the crowd. I'm surprised the reaction was not stronger to him being called a joke, a flash in the pan and all that. It hit for me. My guess is that Logan probably has it where you can't say certain things about him, whether it's stuff that he's done in the past, his controversies, politics, whatever the case might be. Because if you gave Punk a live mic and let him say whatever the hell he wanted about this dude, he would have absolutely torn him to shreds. So the whole segment felt like Punk was being a good boy and holding back, but it still delivered to a degree.
This was a huge letdown, just like you said, in terms of what we would have expected between Punk and Paul. It never got vitriolic. They were both so dismissive of each other that it felt like neither of them thought the other was worth the other's time. And that doesn't make for compelling television. Like, if you don't think the other guy you're across is worth a damn, then I'm not going to think that. And so ultimately it was like, okay, but I was expecting so much more out of these guys. And it just went to like, you're a joke, you're not worth my time, I'm bigger than you, people won't remember you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, like anybody can say that. I want CM Punk, you know? And we didn't really get there. So that was disappointing. Oh, I'm disappointed because just of how tame it was. These guys, it was a couple weeks ago, I think, right? That these two guys were in the ring. It was way better. It was way better than this. This was a letdown.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't let down by it. I just...
there's so much more. Both.
Yeah, but I recognized it for what it was. Like, it was probably the best that Punk could have done, given the restrictions that were certainly on him in a segment with this guy. And
maybe,
I got to tell you this.
I'm not going to like take that. I'm not going to like take that into account to my grading because one, we don't know that for sure. And two, like, when has that ever stopped CM Punk before?
Well, he's not trying to get fired this time.
You made a Vince McMahon joke
Dude.
to Drew McIntyre.
Okay, that's but fine. But Logan doesn't have the skill that Drew does to be able to come back to something like that. And that was close too. Like Drew even was kind of like almost, I don't know what he almost said, but he wasn't totally sure what to do there. This is what I'll say about all of this. Logan Paul has been in this company for a while now, and we've been very specific with our praise and criticism for him. The praise being like he is better in the ring than he has any right to be. And he's better on the mic, or had been many times, than he has any right to be. For me, this latest return since the Raw on Netflix debut, the shine has completely worn off of him. He has not proven to be as good in the ring as we thought he would be at this juncture. And his mic work, while he does get heat, there's no question about that, he's just not really saying anything. He's
hit a ceiling.
It feels empty. It feels like he has hit his ceiling. Just like, to be fair, Bad Bunny would hit his ceiling, right? Like, the guy's immensely popular and he's had a couple of really fun matches. But if you saw him regularly and he was asked to cut promos and go out there and sell pay-per-views, he probably couldn't do it as well as everyone else. Logan comes across as like a mid-carder who's being treated like an upper mid-carder, maybe even a low mid-carder who's being treated like an upper mid-carder because his name has cachet. And it's understandable to a degree, but it feels like it has been on my television way, way too much. I would rather this guy get those one-off stupid WWE Championship matches at Blood Money in the Sand than I have any desire to see him regularly on TV. And the fact that he's in Elimination Chamber for the second year in a row, it's an actual joke.
He's not around enough to really develop a story, so he has to go back to the same thing.
Or an ability. Practice makes perfect.
I'd say the only real story he's been in is the Ricochet thing, because they brought in Samantha Irvin and he could like point to something else and talk about that stuff.
He sunk his teeth into that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that guys, I'm more famous and I'm not worth your time. Like we got to get back to that. I think we will around WrestleMania. I don't think whatever he does is going to be, I'm wealthy, I'm really good at this, blah, blah, blah. I think we'll get a story. But yeah, it is just kind of pretty empty going into this match.
Don't forget the LA Knight feud disappointed as well. I mean, it wasn't bad, but like we thought that the segments between them were going to be amazing and they just weren't, you know?
Yeah.
By the way, there was a Logan AJ Styles segment on Raw during commercial that we didn't get to see. Karrion Kross was in the background. I don't understand what they're doing with that stuff, but I just figured I would mention it. Also, there was a clip package of Cena's post-Royal Rumble promo on Raw. It did a decent amount, Chris, of heavy lifting, reminding us the verbiage he used, the tone in which he spoke. Coming out of the segment with Rock and Cody on Friday, it certainly seemed to play a little bit into what we discussed. Did you notice that from that promo segment, or the promo package, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not like there was anything else. There's nothing else from John Cena post-Rumble that is like, that's all they have.
Yeah,
all
he's
they
done
have
nothing.
is, I'm going to win the chamber. It's best for business. So it's kind of all they have to promote.
I'm just saying the way it was clipped together, it was like ominous kind of. And I don't know, it seemed to be telling. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Could be. It was always a thing. Like, you generally didn't used to have baby faces essentially guarantee that they were going to do things and not follow through on it. And that's like happening quite a bit now.
Cena and Punk, they both guaranteed they'd win the Royal Rumble.
Both essentially guaranteed wins for the chamber. Punk did the same thing for the Rumble and it didn't happen.
Right.
So
Cena didn't guarantee Rumble. Punk guaranteed he would win the Rumble. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I don't love that. I don't want the baby faces to become less legitimate. I don't know.
I don't mind it.
It's something I've started to notice.
I don't mind it if the face crashes out afterward. Like if you're going to go ahead and say everything is riding on this. I have to have this. And then you don't get it. You need to crash out. That has to develop your character and change you. So it needs to be a story point, not just, something that you say because it makes good for a promo. So just like with the women, process of elimination for men's Elimination Chamber, I'll reiterate: John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, and Logan Paul. And the first thing I'll say is, if Cena used his stroke to get in this match, in storyline, he should be the last one to exit a pod. That's how I see it. He should not be in this match until the very end. Also, he probably can't work as long as everyone else, so that would make sense. So I just want to put that out there. So process of elimination, Damian Priest, sorry, bud. With this field, Damian Cody at WrestleMania, no, that's not happening. Cannot see it. Logan Paul would obviously be a Shonda, as my mom, or I should say grandma, would say. No way. Logan and Cody is happening. I'm really scared about Logan in this match. If he pins Cena or Punk, I mean, setting up that as a WrestleMania match, hugely problematic. I hope he gets eliminated first or second right away, doesn't pin anyone. That would be the best case scenario. So Damian Priest, Logan Paul, eliminated. Seth Rollins, man, it would be cool as hell to go Cody, Seth. And you could say that Rock would corrupt Rollins the same way Triple H did previously. Problem is, we got that segment on Monday, which basically told us Rollins is not here for that. Obviously, he hates the Bloodline, hates Roman Reigns, and by proxy hates Rock. So we're eliminating him. So that brings us down to the final three, which I think we can universally agree are the three most likely: Cena, Punk, and McIntyre. And over the last two podcast episodes, Chris, we have given you legitimate storyline for Cena, for Punk, and for McIntyre. What needs to be taken into greatest consideration going into WrestleMania is that this will be John Cena's final match. Final opportunity to main event WrestleMania, to challenge for a title at WrestleMania, to literally just be on the card. And I cannot imagine anyone other than perhaps Logan Paul himself thinking that Cena Logan makes sense for the show. And that's really been the only other direction that's potentially been teased. I have to imagine, even if Cena wants to put over young talent or Triple H thinks it would be a nice idea, at the end, common sense would need to prevail. So I don't see that match happening. And if you're going to have Cena go out, then there's two ways for that to happen on the biggest stage. One, for him to put over his heir apparent, who is Cody. Or two, for him to beat Cody and then start a string of matches and storylines going from now to SummerSlam or whatever period of time where these two behemoths are going after each other and you do the biggest business that you possibly can. So as much as I would love McIntyre personally, and as great as a Cody Punk storyline would be, there's plenty of time for Cody Punk. You can do Cody and McIntyre immediately after Elimination Chamber, if need be, or I'm sorry, immediately after WrestleMania, if need be, because that has been teased. I think you have to do the Cody Cena match. I have John Cena winning the men's Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, I've only got two options here. It's Cena and Punk. And I think going into the Rumble, and maybe even like as soon as the Rumble ended, my thought was Punk. You get him in the title match that he didn't get last year. Makes a lot of sense. Him and Cody would do really well. There's a natural story there. And even a week ago, I could have seen that. But the Rock part of this makes this so weird.
Convoluted.
And it really could go a few. I really think Rock could lead to Punk and Cena either way.
I think McIntyre too. What I laid out earlier, I thought made sense.
Yeah, like not that
he's
Punk
the least
would
likely
join-
of the three, but
yeah, not that Punk would join Rock, but like you could do something there that would make it work. The Rock stole CM Punk's main event. Punk's got it. Yada yada. Like,
well, you have the favor with Heyman. He sees what happened on SmackDown. He calls up Heyman. He goes, "Hey, if Dwayne wants a soul, I want a WrestleMania main event. I'll be his guy." Boom.
But what connection does Heyman have to
the Anoa'i
get
family
in the main event?
The whole family.
Yeah, but he's not with The Rock. He's with Roman.
He's not with him. Like he's not tied to him, but he has the connection to the entire family.
Maybe.
I
wouldn't rule that. I wouldn't rule that out. I do think because that's coming back. The favor that's specifically tied to Heyman in terms of helping out Roman Reigns has to be, I get into my main event of WrestleMania. I think that's a very weird way for CM Punk to earn that, just basic storyline wise, but that is clearly what's going to happen.
Dude, Punk and Rock like reuniting in tandem after being opposed to each other, and Rock stealing his WrestleMania main event and then being the method by which he gets the WrestleMania main event. I mean,
it would be cool.
It's cosmic. I mean, it's fantastic.
Like heel CM Punk is the best CM Punk.
Absolutely.
And if we're being honest, the CM Punk Rock feud for those handful of months was better than Cena Rock.
Oh my God.
You know, it just was. It was incredible.
It was electric.
Those few months there. That's what got me back into pro wrestling.
Dude, Cody, Punk, and Rock doing segments together on the road to WrestleMania would be wild.
It was Punk versus Rock, and I think it was at 13 or 14 that got me back into pro wrestling. Like that is what did it. It wasn't just the Rock coming back. It wasn't Rock Cena. It was Rock Punk because I had heard of this CM Punk guy and I knew the Rock, and I was like, let me check this out. Oh, this is really cool. Like that would be a lot of fun. I think you could do that. And in history would tell you that's most likely. But as we fantasy booked on the emergency show, Cena and Rock teaming up for a 2-man Hollywood power trip would be unreal.
And you have that entire storyline like we laid out. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Of Cena apologizing to Rock because he tore him apart during that feud that they did for WrestleMania. And then he came to realize after actually figuring it out in Hollywood, like you can't actually do both. Like it fits perfectly with what they're trying to do here. And it's also Cena saying to Rock, like, hey man, I get it. Like this is best for business. You need someone who can do this. It's my last run. I want to take this company to the next level. Cody can't do it. And if Cody's going to turn it down, then I'm not. Like it.
And what we're implying, by the way, if you didn't listen to the show, is Cena turns heel at WrestleMania, like Stone Cold in WrestleMania 17, with Rock maybe as a special guest referee.
Something like that.
And that's the reveal.
Yeah.
He's not heel going into WrestleMania. He's heel coming out of WrestleMania for basically the first time ever, which would be unreal. And maybe we're getting too excited in fantasy.
Well, don't forget, Cena has said in interviews, by the way, that he wanted to be heel multiple times, but WWE would never and could never legitimately pull the trigger because he was the cash cow. All the kids were buying his merchandise and the belts and all that type of stuff.
And you know whose belts and merchandise they're buying now?
Cody Rhodes.
Cody Rhodes. Because he has everything he ever
There's
wants.
no concern.
Can't give it to him.
There's no concern about it. And guess what, dude? If he did turn heel in 2025, they're selling the hell out of heel Cena merchandise.
Yes.
Whatever I would buy a heel Cena something, whatever the hell it is. I promise you. So it's the perfect time to do it. And you turn him back face before it's all over. You know, there's still...
You have Cody win it back at SummerSlam.
Correct.
And in the process, Cena turns face.
He realizes that he became everything he hated. He apologizes. He goes on a run, and he has a final match against Braun Breaker.
And maybe at a Money in the Bank, you do a Cena Punk title match.
Absolutely.
You know, you run that thing back again. Like there's it's so. I'm worried it's too obvious now that we've set it up in our heads.
Forget obvious. I'm worried that we've built this up in our heads as like the perfect booking. And then they don't. This is always the problem with wrestling, right? You fantasy book, you book the damn territory, and then it doesn't happen. And you're like, well, it's not as good as I had it in my head, therefore it's bad. We try not to do that on this show. But we have gotten pretty deep into this whole Cena Rock idea to the point that like, it is so immensely attractive that if they don't do it, I feel like there will be no other feeling that I have than disappointment.
No, and look, Punk Rock would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That would be good. I'd be cool with it. That would work.
I also would be cool with McIntyre.
It's the Rock part of this that is like,
right.
Just like last year, it was a terrible way to bring him in. And then they kind of tweaked some things and turned it into an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking like, they did it last year. They could do it again in an unexpected way. Like Rock Roman teaming up was not something we thought would happen. And lo and behold, it was great.
Yeah.
So like Rock Cena teaming up would be incredible. And so my pick is Cena. We're going to try to will this into existence.
I forgot you didn't make a pick. We talked about it for so long.
My pick is Cena. Yeah. We're willing this thing into existence, which would also include me singing Thugonomics or My Time Is Now on the pod.
Oh God, I cannot wait for that.
If if it happens that way, I'll gladly do it.
I might even give you another verse, or might even do the other one just to make you feel good if that actually happens.
Yeah.
If it happens in that manner, excuse me, if it happens in that manner. Yeah.
So that's the pick.
Yeah, I think it's the right pick. And obviously that also means that when it comes to the Cody Rhodes and Rock segment, will he sell his soul? The answer for both of us is no.
You don't even know what for still.
Well, right. But I'm saying when that happens, it's no. What I'm kind of wondering is, does something happen during that segment? For example, does Rock slap the shit out of him? Does Jacob Fatu pop in and kick his ass? Does Solo Sikoa come in and do something? Because we did get the Cody
Rock
and Solo
with the
interaction.
Bloodline, by the way, are we going to get back to Bloodline? Is he going to acknowledge the Bloodline in any
like everyone else that
Solo,
exists,
Roman?
like everyone else that exists outside of Roman Reigns?
Yeah. It's just weird. Like
don't forget,
we had dreamed up the Rock creating his own bloodline and stuff. That never happened.
Well, everyone thought that Rock was the ringleader behind Solo Sikoa becoming the new tribal chief and bringing in Jacob and the Tongans. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe there's something to that here. Like I said, maybe if Cody denies him, like Solo attacks from behind and Rock hugs him. And now that is telling us part of the story into WrestleMania 42. Because we do still expect Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 42.
Yes.
Let's wrap on this. When it comes to Elimination Chamber, we're both picking Cena, okay? But let's give some percentages. Percent chance that Cena, Punk, and McIntyre win this match.
Cena 60, Punk 35, McIntyre 5.
Okay. I'm at 65 for Cena, 25 for Punk, 10% for McIntyre. So we're similar, but I still give McIntyre a better chance.
You know what? I'm changing it. I'm giving 0. It's 65-35. McIntyre is not winning this thing. What am I talking about?
You really don't believe I made a compelling case earlier?
Drew McIntyre is not main eventing this WrestleMania.
Okay.
He's just not with all those other pieces that are on the table.
All right. Fair enough. We will give you our WrestleMania 41 match predictions, not Saturday after WWE Elimination Chamber, because we're going to pretty much know what matches are set, but on our next Tuesday WWE episode, which will be Fallout from Elimination Chamber, also a look ahead to WrestleMania 41. So we have an absolute ton left here for you on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. But Chris, to wrap up our WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview, it is time for us to give a pre-show expectation grade. As always, when we give grades, you get the opportunity to start, and I also get the opportunity to remind all of our listeners that you get to vote and submit your own pre-show expectation grades on Twitter at Getting Overcast. We will post a poll during the pre-show. You get to vote in that, and you get to vote in our post-show poll as soon as Elimination Chamber goes off the air. But Chris, what is your expectation grade for WWE Elimination Chamber?
B+. No title matches. I think the women's tag match will be fine, but whatever. Elimination Chamber matches are just not as exciting or interesting as Royal Rumbles. And yeah, so B+. I think it's pretty much straight B+.
Give me a number grade for that.
88.
Okay. Yeah, so you don't give me much wiggle room when you do something like that. You get right in the middle of that grade. I also agree with you, B+. The women's tag team match, I just don't think is going to really deliver at all. I have zero excitement for it, despite the fact that I love Trish Stratus. The Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn match, I believe, will ultimately steal the show. The men's elimination chamber, I'm a little concerned with Cena and Punk both being kind of older, and then Drew and Priest both being big guys, and then Logan being immensely inexperienced. Like, Seth is really going to need to be the ring general of that match, and I just don't exactly know how it's going to transpire, but I am interested in the fact that we're getting Punk and McIntyre in a cage again. We're getting Rollins and Punk fighting again. And I'm realizing now as I say that, WWE has not done a great job like selling that part of the match, like saying, hey, Rollins gets his hand on Punk again, and McIntyre gets his hands on Punk again. Like, that should really matter. Oh, and by the way, it's Cena and Punk in the same match. They really have not sold that to us. That's really exciting.
The build for the show has not been good.
No.
The promotion has not been good. Yes, there were like multiple segments on Raw that were tied to this match, but like they didn't sell me on it.
But like everything I just told you, doesn't that make you actually excited? Like, oh wait,
yeah, like
that's going to be sick.
They gave us Logan Paul, CM Punk, like not talking about the physicality of the cage, just talking about how the other person doesn't matter. We got Rollins Rock, we got Rollins Cody, and all they talked about was the Rock. They didn't talk about fighting each other. So it was like, sell me the match that we're getting, not this other stuff.
Wouldn't it have been great? 30-second segment, maybe 15-second segment. Rollins and Punk pass each other backstage, and there's like, see you Saturday. Yes, you will. Or like something that basic. That's just like, oh shit, that's right. Rollins is going to fight Punk again. Like, that's sick. They just didn't give us any of that. So The men's chamber, I think, is going to exceed expectations because we're not even thinking of it as being a high quality match, but there's a lot of feuds in there, a lot of hatred that could make it really interesting. The women's elimination chamber, you know, I've been wrong before when I say stuff like this. I think it's going to be the better of the two chambers. I really do. The quality of talent in that match, some of the things that I believe they might do, it might surprise a lot of people going into it, but Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, I do believe, will steal the show, but it is a 4-match card. One of the 4 I don't care about at all. and the other two are pretty much the exact same match, I literally can't go above a B+. But I will say an 89 out of 100. I don't want to have the same number grade as you. I was going to say an 88. 89 out of 100. I think it's going to be on the border of an A-. It is the road to WrestleMania. Even when the build is not great for WWE PLEs over the last couple of years, the shows themselves generally deliver, and I believe this one will. There's plenty of ceiling for it to get into that A- range. Again, those are our pre-show expectation grades. Don't forget, you can vote for your own at Getting Overcast on Twitter, and you can vote for a post-show grade as well. All of it in our WWE Elimination Chamber Instant Analysis podcast Saturday night as soon as the show goes off the air. So that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Of course, on the way out, Silver King does need to remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast, on Twitter at Getting Over on Blue Sky. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
I sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts each week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Plenty left for you in the world of professional wrestling this week. Back on Thursday talking NXT and AEW, and then Saturday night, your WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis for vintage Chris Vanini. This is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.